We're called to order our September Commissioners meeting. We ask Commissioner Belcher to lead us in our invocation, Commissioner Buzzio to lead us in our pledge.
Let's all stand, please. Let's pray together. Heavenly Father, please tonight give us wisdom that passes all understanding. Give us peace. Help us to give us the intellect to do your business, and bless this meeting and bless those who are here. And we pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, now consent concerning the evening's agenda. Are there any additions or deletions?
Mr. Chairman,
Okay,
item 11, stabilization of the county home. I'd like to pull that for discussion.
okay.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to remove item number 13, items for decision, place it on the next board meeting,
Okay.
October board meeting. Thirteen.
Yeah, should have, down, right under consent. Discussion. Anything other?
Motion to approve.
Have a motion, is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed? 6-1. Now, concerning conflict of interest, are there any disclosures that need to be made on this evening? Okay, hearing none, we will move on. At this time, we will have the introduction of our new risk manager.
This is working. Mr. Ward, it's my pleasure to introduce you to Jennifer Banks. Jennifer is our new risk manager. Jennifer is a East Carolina alum. She holds her undergraduate and her master's from East Carolina. She has a master's in occupational safety, and she is standing up that new program. It is the program that the board put together. I think we talked about it last year. So we are very pleased to have her. She brings a wealth of knowledge, both in the field doing safety audits, safety work, safety training, as well as putting programs together. So she brings that package. I remember Chairman Langley saying at the meeting when we talked about this that we wanted to make sure we had someone who knew how to work in the field as well as they did in the office. And Jennifer brings that package completely. She, in fact, she said she likes to spend most of her time in the field. So I'll let her say a few words. And again, we're very pleased to have her. She's over at the health department right now. And as soon as we get offices straight around here, we'll be moving her back over to the administration building.
Yeah, like Brian said, I do prefer to work in the field, so I have experience doing a lot of field work and training in some things such as confined space, lockout, tag out, forklift safety training, and also have the ability to complete workers' compensation and do liability and property claims and root cause analysis and ergonomic assessments and things of that sort. So I've done it almost 9 years now. Like you said, I just can't stress enough. I believe that as a safety person as well as a risk person, you really can't get the job done without being out in the field, so you truly don't know what's going on. Believe that it's important for us to, of course, comply with all regulatory aspects, be it OSHA, National Fire Prevention Association, or Building Code, Electric Code, or Environmental Protection Agencies. All of those things are important to meet those minimal requirements as far as conducting trainings, but it's more important to be able to apply those things, and you only can do that by being out in the field, asking questions and seeing what's going on. So I look forward to it, and everybody has been very nice, and thanks for the opportunity.
Okay, we certainly are glad to have you, and listening to you, we see that you are pretty much a self-starter, so that is a good thing. You will see what needs to be done, and you'll take care of it, so we're happy.
Yes. Thank you.
Any other comments, any other commissioners?
Glad you're here.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, our public comments, we have one, Ms. Donna Lay.
I'm Donna Lay, and this evening I'm representing the Citizens for Better Government Committee. I rise to object your consideration at your August 1st meeting of a revision of the Hospital System Trust Agreement. This item was improperly before the board when you voted to approve an extension of it as recommended by the Hospital Authority Board. That action was illegal because the hospital board meeting at which the advised agreement was discussed and approved was not a legal meeting. The required notice was not provided to those on the notification list as provided for in NCGS 143-318.12. The county manager and Mr. Buzzio, the chair of the hospital board, were both aware before the meeting that the required notice had not been sent as required by law. At the August 1st meeting, you took action by reference to an addendum of sorts related to Vidant's continued participation in the trust fund that was not made public. The appellate courts of North Carolina have held that a public body cannot take action by reference to a document that is not disclosed at the meeting or prior thereto. Therefore, we suggest all previous action on this matter are null and void. We object to any extension of Vidant's participation in the trust fund after the termination date of September 1st. We do not object to the parties working together to settle any legitimate liabilities, but we do not think it in the best interest of Beaufort County that Vidant have participation in expenditures past September 1st as provided in the original agreement. There may be a good reason for continuing to allow Vidant to approve expenditures of the trust fund that we're not aware of. We do know that the public has been shamefully excluded from knowledge of what the hospital board is doing and why. Decisions are being made behind closed doors without any explanation of the nature of the information that qualifies the meeting to be exempted from the open meetings law. This is a callous disregard of the people's right to know how their business is being handled. This board needs to cease and desist from excluding the public from their business, and you need to advise your hospital board to do likewise. We ask you, reconsider your action of August 1st related to the trust agreement and table further consideration until the hospital board presents you a legal recommendation for revision of the trust agreement for your consideration. If this board does not correct this violation of the law, the CBG has already voted to file a lawsuit on the matter. The public has a right to know what the hospital authority is doing and why. By approving documents only by reference and not making them public before you vote is shameful and not the way to do the public's business. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, items for consent now. Is there a motion concerning the remaining items?
I'll make that motion, Mr. Chairman.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed, 6-1. All right, item for presentation, North Carolina fishery presentation. Benjamin Ricks.
While we're getting this set up, I want to thank you guys for having me here. We also want to appreciate y'all's support in our stocking efforts and our recovery efforts. We recognize that y'all have done what you could do in publicly acknowledging our efforts and commending that. We really appreciate that. So, with that, we're going to talk to you a little bit today about the Tar River and the striped bass therein. Many of you know it's a very valuable fishery to this area. It's very popular, sought after fish, and in this portion of the river, just right around Washington, almost all year long. So we'll get this geared up and. This other fellow in the green shirt is Kyle Rachels. He's my counterpart, and we are your fisheries biologists for this district. So it's us two guys and a bunch of water, and we're happy to do it, but it's a full-time job for sure.
Morning, Katie.
Sure.
Vic, Vic.
Okay, well, we've already kind of done the introduction, so I'll just get going into the presentation. Striped bass in the Tar River. Generally, we see the striped bass in the Tar River stay in the Tar River, Pamlico River, and into the Pamlico Sound. We don't have a whole lot of out-migrating fish into the Atlantic Ocean from the Tar River. And then in the early spring to mid-spring, we see these fish moving upriver between Rocky Mount and Tarboro when they're making their annual spawning run. And the important thing to note about the Tar River population, as well as the Neuse River populations and the Cape Fear for that matter, is that they are supported by stockings of 100,000 annual stockings plus or minus every year. And those are phase 2 fish, which means they're about 6 to 8 inches. So each one of these rivers gets about 100,000 every year if everything goes according to plan. The fish that are stocked in the in the Tar River, Pamlico River, are stocked around Dinah's Landing. And just kind of to give you a feel for how many fish we've stocked since we started stocking, about 4.3 million striped bass have been stocked in these waters right out here outside the office since about 1983. Some of those have been phase 1 fingerlings, which are about 2 to 3 inches long, but a lot of them, about half of them, a little more than half of them actually, have been those phase 2 fish. So it's a lot of fish to be putting in the water, and we're happy to do it. Important thing about our program, in 2010 we started genetic tagging our fish, and what that means is you can see the large female and the 3 males in this brood tank. They are fin clipped, and their genetics are evaluated and recorded and cataloged. And from that, we can trace back the genetics of all hatchery fish, not only to the hatchery, but also to which male and which female it came back from. So to kind of overly simplified, it's kind of a paternity test of sorts. So when we get a fish on the spawning grounds, or a fish anywhere for that matter, we can take a fin clip and we can know definitively whether or not it was a hatchery fish. And this was a game changer for us. We're kind of leading the pack in striped bass management with this technique because it's definitive. Before we were using tags and other marks that fade or fall out, but this, the genetics of the fish never changes. So that's been able to really allow us to have some much more conclusive answers to some of our management questions. So striped bass are a unique fish because they're one of the fish in North Carolina that are managed jointly through the Wildlife Resources Commission and the Division of Marine Fisheries. That management plan is formalized in a fisheries management plan, of which we work together with both agencies to develop. And in that plan, we talk about the management of the fish, but also the duties that each agency has. The recreational harvest regulations are established by each agency. So we have our inland jurisdictional regulations, and then Division of Marine Fisheries has their regulations. Sometimes they're similar, sometimes they're a little different depending on the body of water and the agency plans. As far as commercial harvest, there's no commercial harvest in inland waters, but there is 25,000 pounds of commercial harvest, and that's divided across the Tar, Neuse, and Pamlico Sound, and that harvest is monitored by the Division of Marine Fisheries. Our biggest influx of data in this process is our annual spring electrofishing surveys. As I said before, the spawning grounds are between Rocky Mount and Tarboro. So that's the area that we do our electrofishing surveys. And from those surveys, we get relative abundance, so how many fish are there, size and age structure, how big are they, how old are they. We just talked about hatchery contribution. That's something we're very interested in, so we've been collecting fin clips. And also we have a creel survey where we interview anglers, and that's done in conjunction with DMF to get an accurate estimate of how many fish are being harvested. So just to kind of give you a look at, I'm not going to get too data heavy, but just a couple graphs to show you what the striped bass population looks like. You see, we have most of the fish we have are between 14 and maybe 25 inches, and we do have a few, and when I say few, I mean 3 older fish between 33 and 34 inches. Those fish are the older fish, the larger fish, and those are the fish that we'd like to see more of, going into the future. Those are the large fish are the ones that are going to be paramount in recovering the population. Now this chart, there's a lot going on here, so bear with me for just a second and let me describe what's going on. The white bars are fish that have no genetic record, so we can't trace them back to the hatchery. It means one of two things, or one of a few things really, but it means that one, they're too old for our genetic database. It could mean that they are a wild produced fish, or it could mean they're a fish from somewhere else that got lost and came into our waters. The colored bars represent hatchery fish that we can trace back to the hatchery. And you can also see color-coded, that also shows the age of the fish. So you can see that we have fish from age 1 to age 5. We know we have fish up to about age 6 in the tar from some of our other data, but obviously there's not a whole lot of older fish. And this is concerning for 2 reasons. One reason is, striped bass are known to live 20 plus years. So if we're seeing fish drop out at age 5, that raises some significant concerns about their mortality. From our work on the noose, we know that natural mortality likely isn't very high, so fish dying from natural causes, diseases, other fish eating them, birds, anything that they would die of naturally, that seems to be pretty low and right within the realm that's natural and typical for the species. So we are seeing fish falling out of the fishery before they're reaching the ability to really start to contribute heavily to the fishery. The other thing we see in this chart is that just about all of the fish in this fishery are hatchery fish. So a few years ago, we thought that our stockings were contributing minimally. When the genetics program started to flush out, we realized that we are contributing almost 90% or better. It is likely that as the years progress, those white bars in the far end, kind of from 23 to 29 inches, 28 inches, that those fish are hatchery fish. There's no reason to assume they aren't, given the fact that all the ones in front of them are. They're just too old. So in the next 2 to 3 years, we'll see those bars fill out, and in all likelihood, they'll be hatchery fish as well. So the current status of the fishery is that the Tar River striped bass population is being sustained by our hatchery stocking efforts, and there's little to no evidence of natural recruitment. So we're not seeing a lot of small, wild produced fish in the fishery right now. Also, these analyses suggest that fish are being rapidly removed from the Tar River, the Pamlico Sound, because we're not seeing fish over age 5. So something's cropping them off before they're reaching these older ages. And the high mortality is one of the prime things we think is limiting the recovery efforts of striped bass in the Tar River. As a result of these findings, again, the genetics program was groundbreaking for us. As a result of these findings and a public interest in the high mortality rates, we have accelerated our fishery management plan schedule, and that will start with this fall, actually this month. We're going to start having meetings with Division of Marine Fisheries to talk about a stock assessment. And some of the goals through that process are to establish what are our management objectives. We want to have a formal stock assessment. We also are going to review our stocking strategies, make sure that we're getting what we need to out of our stocking plan. And also, we're going to identify what are the other research needs or gaps in knowledge we need to assess the striped bass. As far as our management scenarios that we could have, our goal is a self-sustaining population, i.e. we would love to put ourselves out of business stocking. You know, we'd like to move on and stock something else. And we would like these fish that we stock to take over and start reproducing and producing recruits that are wild. Another option, and what we are currently in, whether we like it or not right now, is a put, grow, and take fishery, where we put fish in the water, they grow, and then they're taken out by recreational and commercial anglers. Another option would be that, okay, our stocking plans are not working, we're not recovering the fishery, so we abandon ship. And that's not a very popular plan for anybody, because that would basically mean the end of the striped bass fishery in the Neuse, in the Tar, and the Neuse River for that matter. So that's not a popular option, but that would explain what's going on. If nothing changes and we quit stocking within about 5 to 6 years, a striped bass would be a very rare fish in the Neuse River, or Tar River, excuse me. What we are doing right now is we are proposing, and this will come up in our upcoming public hearings in January, 2 fish per day, 26-inch minimum size limit for the Tar and the Neuse River, and then the same season that's been the last few years also. Our plan to get this out there, and we've received a lot of positive support for this. A lot of the anglers, a lot of the public are very concerned with the striped bass population and want to see us protect them more. But we're going to reach out and meet with many anglers and many of the local conservation groups and talk with them about this, tell them what's going on. But the intent of this is to preserve the striped bass and promote a self-sustaining population in the Tar and the Neuse River. But this alone will not, fix all our problems. It definitely needs to be part of a larger plan to reduce mortality, in the entire system. And then with that, I didn't want to take up too much of your time. I'll open it up to questions. So.
Commissioners have any questions?
I have one.
Sure.
It looks like with the proposed limits of 2 26-inch fish per day that you're trying to open this thing up enough to make sure that it's not, what you're putting in is not being overfished.
Sure. Yes, we
That's what it
definitely.
looks like. Is that the goal?
Yes, that's a more conservative regulation than what we have now. So, like I said, that will be to reduce the mortality. Right now, they are overfished, and we want to kind of tone it back a little bit as far as the harvest goes.
Do you have the capability for stocking more fingerlings?
Right now, we are about at capacity. Certain years, and the fish, I didn't mention this, the fish are grown at the Edenton National Fish Hatchery. They do a really good job. I want to give them credit. Certain years we can stock a few more, but it would be hard to stock double under our current plan. Sometimes we get a couple good fish and we produce a lot of fish, and we could stock more. And one of the other things that we've done is stock fry or smaller fish that were extra or surplus or were used to answer some other questions as well. So.
Commissioner Brand?
You said earlier that, in fact, I got 2 questions. You said earlier that that the fish that we find in the river now are around 5 years old?
Up to 5 or 6 years old,
And
yes, sir.
do you have any reasons why they aren't living any longer than what they are?
Well, they're being removed from the fishery. So like we talked about a second ago, harvest is very high. The mortality rates are very high, and it's.
But you're not seeing any fish kills or anything like that?
No, I mean we do have fish kills, as everybody knows, but the fish kills don't seem to be driving what we're seeing.
Mm-hmm.
And even in the few fish kills we see, we don't see big older fish. So there's something else going on that we need to work with Division of Marine Fisheries as part of the FMP plan, so that we can kind of make things better for everybody involved. So.
One other thing, you had, when you had that slide up a couple of things back, that right there.
Okay.
You said that those no-tagged fish
Yes, sir.
are white.
Right.
what is the deal with the blue tag and the orange or yellow tag on top of the no tag?
Okay, I should have probably made it a little better. It's no problem. The different colors represent different age classes. So just say the 22-inch bar, which has several different age classes. The little green at the very top,
Right.
a small proportion of 22-inch fish are age 3. So those are pretty fast-growing fish. A large proportion of those fish are age 4, and then a smaller proportion are age 5. So that's what the color code demarks.
Right.
Anything further? All right, thank you, sir.
Great. Thank you guys for having me.
Ms. Christina Smith. Stabilization of the county home.
I'll be happy to respond to any questions that any commissioners may have.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Since I pulled this, the reason that I pulled it is, this thing's been sitting out there now for at least 10 years, and it keeps getting bumped in the commissioner's budget. And it keeps sitting there rotting more and more and more. And the estimates are about $250,000 to demolish the thing and level the site, take care of the environmental hazards like whatever lead's there and whatever asbestos are there. And we're going to spend $25,000 so we can prepare the building to sit there while we make a decision with it, about it. $25,000 is about 10% of the cost. I mean, I don't understand why we don't just go ahead and use the $25,000 is wasted as far as I'm concerned. I don't understand why we have the cash that we don't go ahead and tear the building down. We know that we're going to tear it down sooner or later. Let's go ahead and bid the process and get it over with, because the building has been sitting there at least 10 years waiting on commissioners to decide to do something positive. So now, instead of tearing the building down, getting the problem out of the way, we want to keep spending money on it. So my question to the rest of the board is, why don't we go ahead and appropriate the money? We don't have to appropriate money. Why don't we advise Christina to go ahead and get bids for the demolition of the building, and then let's look at it and see if we can live with that and get this thing over with.
You put that in a motion?
Well, okay, yes, that is a motion.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Is that coming? I have a question, and I don't understand this. I mean, I'm asking for information, because I've been around asbestos very little and don't know anything about it. Will this be two bids, one for removal of asbestos and another one for the demolition of the home? That would, I know when we were in the schools and we had to do it, that's how we had to do it. Is that what you would do?
Christina has received a budgetary quote from an asbestos abatement firm that we have a budget on that, but my assumption would be that we would do that with a specialty firm to handle that instead of rolling it into a demolition contract, because simply, if you did that, you'd just be paying additional on top of it, because they would hire somebody to do it and then tack on 10 or 15%. So yes, two contracts. And just for the board's understanding, the reason we did this, I actually asked Christina to do this, to go ahead and put this together. We put some money in the budget. As you'll recall, there was money in the budget to tear this down, and it was pulled from, the board pulled it from the budget. So our concern was that we stabilize that and take care of any safety issues. We didn't want it to be a liability, so that's why there was some money put in the budget to do that. But we're happy to do what the board would like for us to do on that, but we do not have funds in the current budget to demo that building.
Okay. That's one of my questions.
Okay, any other questions or comments?
I guess what
Commissioner?
I guess what we're doing is just getting bids.
Yeah.
That's all we're doing. Okay.
Commissioner Waters?
Was the 250,000, was that for both?
Christina can speak to that. I think that was.
Yes, that would be for the demolition as well as the asbestos abatement. And we have completed the asbestos survey. I went ahead and did that, and so we have the report, and so that's why we do have a pretty good budgetary number on that.
Okay, Commissioner Booth.
Mr. Manager, you said the demolition money was not in the budget this year, is that correct?
That's correct. It was pulled, it was removed from the budget from the board, by the board.
And this $25,000 was also not an additional, that was, we're pulling that from the funds that were approved for regular M&R for the buildings.
We actually put some money in the budget for that.
So what you, Mr. Chairman?
Go ahead.
So if we, tonight, if we vote on Hood's motion, we're just voting for bid process. It will come back to us to allocate the 200,000.
That's correct. That's my understanding of the motion.
That's my understanding too. Is that right?
That's correct,
And
yeah.
it will just delay the
Spending that
buttoning
25.
up of the property.
Well, I think we, Mr. Chairman.
I'm sorry.
Let Ron go. He hasn't said anything yet.
Mr. Chairman? Christina, let me ask you a
Yes.
question. What are the safety issues?
Safety issues, there, the county home is now open. Anyone can walk through there. The doors are open, the windows are knocked out. We've had issues in the past with people living in the building. So, I mean, there's safety concerns with people getting into the building that are not supposed to be there.
From the bid process to demolition, were you to approve that, how long would that process take?
I would anticipate it would be completed within 90 days.
So the safety issues would be there for 90 days?
Yes.
So the question comes in is, do we want to have any safety upgrades while we're waiting for the bid process?
I don't think so. I mean, just from my personal feeling.
It's gonna take 90 days to do the safety upgrades. I mean, you can tear the
Yeah.
thing down while you're waiting to do that.
I
Would
agree.
it take 90 days?
The current contract is not 90 days. It was actually a few weeks, but that's because we wanted, because of the safety issues, we wanted to continue and do that pretty fast. So we put in a really quick duration to make sure that it was done.
So do you have a
quickly.
contract pending for the 25,000?
That's what was on the consent agenda for approval
They could start immediately?
yes, per the purchasing policy, because it's over a certain threshold. It
Chairman.
needed to go before the commissioners.
Thank you, Christine.
Let me, Gary.
Go ahead.
My question was
Okay,
answered.
go ahead.
Well, the building's been sitting there for 10 years, with this safety risk. And I mean, we've had the police go out there and throw people out of the building, so we don't have any more increased risk of going ahead and tearing the building down than we do of spending the $25,000 while we're trying to decide to tear the building down, because all we're doing is letting this problem go on and on and on, and it's a very easily solved problem.
All right, we ready to vote? All in favor of Commissioner Richardson's motion, raise your right hand.
And that's study only.
Opposed? 7-0. All right, continue now with items for discussion. Request for funding of the city pool, Christy Robertson.
Hello, I'm Christy Robertson. I'm the Director for Parks and Recreation for the City of Washington. We are just here on behalf of the city to request again funding for the dehumidification system. Our budget numbers have come in significantly lower than what we originally had planned for. We went to the school board and asked for $12,500, but due to other projects they have going on, they're unable to assist us with us. And of course, we house the Washington High School swim team. So we're here on behalf of just asking you to consider again with the lower bid that we have for the dehumidification system, a possible funding of $12,500.
What is the pleasure of the board?
I have a question.
Commissioner Richardson?
Does the school pay, they've used this for swim
Yes, sir.
training for several years. Do they pay you anything for that?
They pay about $1,800 a year for that. It actually has been increased for this fiscal year. What is it, Matt, about $7,800? Around $7,800 this year.
So now they're actually paying for the service?
Correct.
70.
Well, I'll have difficulty voting for this because it's really a city problem. The city funds that, it's a city project, so, I can't support it for that reason.
Mr. Chairman. Do the people in Washington pay the same rate as the people in Beaufort County? I don't have a problem with raising the county rate to a larger amount of money for a county resident. The way I understand it, the county residents use it more than the city
Correct.
residents. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And I think you ought to go back to school and ask them for money again.
And they actually have, we have had those conversations that they will revisit this depending on how their projects go, but they were anticipating that there would not be funding left.
Anything further? Okay, there'll be no action. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chocowinity EMS Emergent Franchise, second reading.
Good evening, Commissioners. This is the second reading for the request of a non-emergent transport franchise for Chocowinity EMS Incorporated.
Any questions or comments from any commissioner?
Well, I have some comments.
I'd like to make a motion.
Okay, Commissioner Richardson can make your comment.
Well, you know, here we are. We spent a lot of time last month talking to Chocowinity about how they ran their business, and what we found out was they really weren't running their business. The employees were deciding when they made calls. We found out that the calls that they had set up for this transport service weren't being made, that the people who were calling to have the calls made were complaining, like the Vidant was complaining that these guys didn't come out and pick up people when they should. And what it came down to is we have what I call a bad management situation. And part of us asked Chocowinity to come back to us at this meeting and tell us how they planned to run their business so they could solve their management problems. And then there were some motions made that we, as I say, you're buying goats for 50 cents and you're selling them for 25 and you're wondering why you're not making any money. So the motion that was made from this board to give them a transport franchise is equivalent to we're going to buy more goats and we're going to make up our losses based on volume. And this is impossible to do. You have a really bad management situation at Chocowinity EMS. Nobody knows what's going on over there. This board has refused to do a forensic or management audit so that we can see what's going on. There are a lot of rumors out there that involve people that are supposed to be on the payroll and they're not being there to work, and there's just regulatory problems. And this is a bad situation. And I'm predicting it won't get any better. And I'm going to tell you why I'm not going to vote for this. I can't vote for this because, number one, listen to this. Providing emergency services is what Chocowinity keeps telling us this is about. But Chocowinity EMS at the special call July the 20th meeting to address this problem said that the county collects for them, about $360,000 each year in taxes for that district. They said they could put an emergency vehicle, EMS vehicle, on the road for $420,000 a year. That's only a $60,000 shortfall, okay? That is a $60,000 shortfall. They should be collecting at least $150,000 from the emergency trips that they make. $60,000 from $90,000, from $150,000 is $90,000 surplus. You need to ask yourself, why isn't there a surplus, okay? And there's some real good reasons for that. Some of them I hear the rumors about, and it all goes to bad management, really bad management. To sum these numbers up, there should be a $90,000 surplus each year. The number of emergency calls each year indicates that one EMS vehicle can handle those calls, providing they are backed up with mutual aid availability and/or the QRV. And the county has already proposed a system of management of EMS that involves the QRVs and the shifting of county vehicles in order to cover when other vehicles are out. Giving this franchise to Chocowinity is something that's going to cost the taxpayers of Beaufort County more and more money because Chocowinity is not going to do any better having more vehicles than they did with the vehicles that they've got now. It's a management problem. The numbers show that it is a management problem. And without a forensic or management audit of Chocowinity EMS, the taxpayers of Beaufort County will not know where the money is going. And believe me, you, the taxpayers, are responsible for this. They can talk about this all they want to, that they're an independent unit and 501(c) or whatever it is, but the taxpayers are on the hook for this. And when it goes down, when it finally goes down, it's going to really be bad. And I can't vote for this because Chalkawinity EMS has the wherewithal and the money to put the EMS unit out. The county has the backup vehicles in Aurora stationed other places that we can shift into place when their unit goes out to provide backup. And we have the QRVs to provide that. We've already paid for this stuff. So the last issue that's involved in this is the government is putting a government agency in the business of competing against private industry. And there's nothing good that's going to come out of this when it's all over with. So I can't vote for it.
All right.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion, and but before I do, I just want a couple comments. Personally, I feel that they have good management there. You've been able to run 2 trucks up until this point with only $326,000 from the county. And that includes a 35% loss in revenue because of customers or clients that have no insurance. So you've been moving along and only because of good management. Also, your 911 calls require the 2 trucks. And I firmly believe that by giving you a franchise, it's not going to cost the taxpayer of this county another dime, because we're not going to be giving you any further tax money, and the rate currently is going to stay at 3.5. At the business plans I've looked at, it's very possible that we could be lowering EMS taxes in Chalkawinity EMS district come June of next year. So I'd like to make a motion to approve the second reading for the Chalkawinity EMS. That's my motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Waters.
I took a look at the most recent numbers that were given me on Chalkawinity EMS and compared those with White Oak that operated in Belhaven. And here's some numbers that I saw. There was $27,000 difference on the revenue side when you compared those two. When you looked at the expenses on Chalkawinity was $79,000 higher. Both of those included the payment on a truck. The thing I think we need to remember is that the tax rate in Chalkawinity and the town of Chalkawinity is 3.5 cents. In the Belhaven Pantagabath area, that tax rate is 5 cents. If next year, if this plan does not work, then if you went from 3.5 to 5 cents, that tax rate would increase your revenue by $139,000. So there is a way. If this plan does not work, the backdrop is to increase the tax rate. And I hope that Ron is right. I hope that you're able to lower that. So, I'm going to support this, but I think it's important to understand the thing that stands out to me is that the expenses are almost $80,000 higher than another model, and I didn't dig into that. But the revenues are pretty much the same. I was a little bit surprised on that. And another comment is that if the billing is done through the county, there's some additional money that can come back, if I understand it correctly, through Medicaid at the end of the year. And based on the numbers for Chowan County, that's about $50 per call. So, that's some additional money that can be put in there that's not being used. To assassinate in public continually about management, when I was in the banking business, that's one of the things we had to do was evaluate management. I mean, I compliment the Chalkawinity EMS for trying to make this thing work. It's going to be a lot better if you guys can continue to make this plan work. I'd like to go just one step further, is that if this plan does not work, I'm not willing for the county to put one truck over there and Chalkawinity EMS have one truck. If this plan does not work, And the taxes, if you guys don't want to go up on the tax, and it has to be subsidized, I don't want this finger pointing between, one truck was county, one truck was Chocowinity EMS. Where's the problem at? Is that I'm willing to give Chocowinity EMS a chance to make it work. But if it does not work and we come at another standstill, then I want the county to step over there and own the 2 trucks. But I'm going to support this, and I'm willing to give the Chocowinity EMS board a chance to make it work.
Anything further?
Mr. Chairman, the way it looks to me is it's not going to cost us anything to let them give it a try. We're not going to put any tax dollars in it, first of all, and the tax rate's going to remain the same at 3.5, and it's going to be used, I assume, just like it always has been used. Is that not correct, Brian? The tax will still be going for what it's always been going for.
Yes, sir.
Based on what Frankie said, I think probably would be a good idea for the Chocowinity EMS to take a hard look at why their expenses are higher than Bellhaven was. You got an $80,000 gap there, and if you could save some of that $80,000 by some management, that would probably be all to your advantage. But I'm willing to support it because it doesn't have any tax money involved in it. As far as I'm concerned, if a lot of counties, they just do a county-wide franchise. I mean, it's done, and in several counties in eastern North Carolina, and they compete. The whole county competes with the private, and I'm like Ed. If another EMS in Beaufort County comes to us and says we want to do it too, that's up to them. As long as they're not spending tax dollars, I don't have a problem with it. So I'll support it and see where it takes us. And I'm like Frankie, I don't want to get involved in we own an ambulance and they own an ambulance in one station. I don't think that's good. But let's hope it doesn't come to that. But if it does, then we'll take a look at that when it happens.
Anything further?
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Good.
I feel the same way that Robert and Frankie does. I think it's important that Chocowinity has this second truck. And if, as Robert said, if it doesn't work, then we'll find a way to make it work at the end of the day. I'm going to support this, but I have my reservations right now, but I think us as commissioners should give you all the opportunity to make this thing work. And I assume that you and Shane have talked about this in depth.
Yes.
And are going to work hand in hand with each other.
Yes, sir.
Okay, good.
Anything further? All right, let's vote. All in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed, 6-1. Contract modification with Chocowinity EMS.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. As you are aware, you currently have a contract with Chocowinity EMS for provision of services. At the last meeting, you made a modification to that contract to allow them to collect delinquent accounts in any manner in which they chose to. The previous contract did not allow them to do that without approval of the board. That amendment was made to the contract. Now that they are able, under the franchise ordinance, to provide transports, you would need to modify this contract again to allow that, because their previous contract did not allow them to do that. One of the things that in conversations with the county attorney, we had the original contract, we had an amendment to the contract. This would have been the second amendment to the contract. So our thought was that we would just rewrite it and include all those things, so we would have one contract and not have to go back and forth and try to find the amendments. So on page 314 in your agenda package, you'll see that new contract. There is one item in there that I need to draw your attention to. It is in item number 1, paragraph number 1. It currently reads the EMS agency, it's the second sentence. The EMS agency may provide basic level transport for any inter-facility transfers. That needs to be changed. That was language that was in there prior, and when we looked at it, that should have been taken out. What we propose to you is the EMS agency may provide basic level transport in accordance with the franchise agreement. So that needs to be modified in there. I apologize for that not being caught the first time. But the other changes in paragraph number 2, where we simply took out, like you did on the original First Amendment, to say they can collect, they retain their billings and they may collect them as they so choose. So from that perspective, we'd recommend your approval.
Mr. Chairman.
Wait a minute. What's the pleasure of the board?
Mr.
So
Chairman.
moved.
We have a motion. There's a second.
Second.
Discussion.
Mr. Chairman, on paragraph number 4, on page 315, or page 2 of the contract, paragraph 4, number 4, second paragraph in number 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 line down. The MSAZ will be permitted to utilize only one designated EMS unit for 911 transport, and those calls designated medical necessity above basic level by medical physician working at both inside out. I believe that should be withdrawn also, because they're going to be using 2 911 vehicles, so this sentence doesn't make sense. So basically, we're tying their hands again.
I think you could, I think the reason that was in there, and again, I'm
The reason it
sorry.
was in there, because I know Dave was in those negotiations, I think, I forgot who else, Gary or Robert, is that we wanted to make sure they were using at least one vehicle for 911 calls. Well, they're actually using 2 vehicles now,
Okay.
second vehicle. So that sentence, if we leave it in there, we're back to the same old argument.
I mean, you could say the EMS agency will be permitted to utilize designated EMS units for 911 transports on those calls. I mean, you don't necessarily have to delete the whole sentence. You could just say that they could use those units for. And I would defer to the county attorney on that, since he was the one who helped negotiate with the original contract.
Yeah, I think that's utilize EMS units, just take out.
Speak up, David.
Only one designated.
Just taking off the
3.
one designated?
David, I didn't hear what you said.
Take those 3 words, only one designated, take those 3 words out. Will be permitted to utilize EMS unit for 911 transports and those calls designated as medical necessity above basic level.
Add a S to unit.
Yeah. So that gives them 2 911 vehicles and the 3rd ambulance for the franchise. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Well, it would allow them to use all 3 of their ambulances for 911 calls if they need to. Any of their ambulances could be used for 911 calls.
Anything further?
I have some comments. What you just saw here by taking that language out is the goat story again. Now we've got 3 goats instead of 2 goats to keep up. We were already losing money on 2 goats, and I have serious doubts that the 2 goats are going to make any money that these guys have agreed to. So now we've thrown 3 goats into the game. We have increased expenses on a situation that already has revenue problems and management problems with people showing up to work and licensing and a whole bunch of other things going on over there. So what I'm predicting is this situation is only going to get worse. I'm not going to vote for this contract because the contract also allows in Section 3B they will maintain 2 separate sets of books. That's a red flag to anybody that knows anything about this stuff. This thing is a bad deal. We've never seen the 2 sets of books. It's hard to even see 1 set of books over there. And when you see the books, you see a lot of bills, a lot of expense, a lot of more labor than should be there. So this thing is going to go downhill, and it's going to go downhill really fast. These commissioners are the ones that are enabling Chocowinity to fail, whereas we have the ability and the authority to do a forensic audit, figure out where the expenses are going, where the waste is, and fix it. So I'm not voting for this because it is a bobsled to bankruptcy.
I call the question.
Mr. Chairman, before he calls the question, look, I was on this committee that worked on this originally. And what we were doing, let's separate the hospital's calls to Chocowinity from a 911 call through dispatch over here. What we said is that the hospital could not call and have both vehicles from Chocowinity making a transport from Vidant Hospital to Pitt at the same time. You had to leave one vehicle in the garage over there to answer 911 calls through dispatch. And I don't think that should change. Do you, Shane? Because you are leaving the whole Chocowinity area uncovered if you do that. And we don't want to do that. We want dispatch to be able to have an ambulance. Now, there was always the possibility that dispatch would call the second ambulance and it would go off into a call in the Chocowinity area somewhere, and both ambulances would be out. At that time, you would do mutual aid if you had a third call, which you hope. But I think what this thing really should say is only one ambulance can be out doing a transport from Beaufort to Pitt at any one time. And I think Chocowinity EMS will be happy with that, because they don't want both of their ambulances in Greenville and the area not covered over there. So that's my
Mr.
take on
Chairman,
what
I have a
happened
question.
Commissioner Richardson.
Well, to what Mr. Belcher had to say, Bob, you realize we're talking about 3 ambulances now and not 2?
Yeah, but I was assuming that basically what that third ambulance is going to be a transport ambulance for basic level cost that he would do in the community, not to necessary, probably not very much to Beaufort County Hospital, because they want a paramedic on it. You're not going to put a paramedic on that third unit, I don't think, are you? I mean, for the most part, it'll just be transports or not. I mean, it's up to you, Mr. Chairman, whether you can answer, but I didn't know that we were putting paramedics on the third vehicle, because it would just be basically transports to the doctor and around town, things like that from calls you got.
I mean, what you have there?
Yeah, I just want to clarify something that you were talking about. Shane, I think that there's a possibility on occasions that you would have to have 2 ambulances in Greenville. Is that not true? Say you picked up a heart attack victim and you had to take that second ambulance to Greenville. So there's a possibility that
No,
it's going to
but that would be through dispatch.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, and they would both be in Greenville then, but you would keep that second ambulance in the garage until
I agree with
dispatch
that.
called.
I agree with that.
But it wouldn't be from a transport from
Right.
Beaufort County Hospital, somebody that they had in the emergency room, been sitting there six hours waiting for a transport. That's what happens at the emergency room. They've got the emergency room's got an ambulance. I mean, they've got an ambulance sitting out here. And I had people call me and say, well, you were heartless saying that you should look for their insurance. Well, the truth of the matter is that Beaufort County Hospital has an ambulance, and they could use their ambulance. What is that ambulance out there for? Yeah, but don't they have an ambulance that can go to Beaufort County Hospital and move somebody, don't they? Just to the helipad? Well, how do they, are we the only way they get their folks to Greenville? Well, I'm sorry, I assumed that they had an ambulance in Beaufort County somewhere. I didn't know that we were doing the only transports to Greenville out there. That's news to me.
Commissioner Belcher, they have a critical care transport ambulance stationed at the airport that does critical care transfers when the helicopter isn't flying or when they're doing other things.
Yeah.
But it's a critical care transport.
So what they've got to do at the hospital is call either a paid provider or Chocowinity, one or the other, to come get a patient who's been sitting there in the emergency room and they're trying to clear him out. Is that basically it? Well, that is news to me. I thought they had an ambulance in Beaufort County that made transports when it had to.
Just critical care transport.
Just critical care transport. So I'm staying corrected then.
Can we call them?
Sir, a little more information. Everybody heard that Johnson Ambulance Service went out of business last week. In the last month, in the last 30 days, Eastern North Carolina has lost 300 ambulances that provide the service that we provide.
Johnson is big.
In the state?
In Eastern North Carolina.
Johnson is one of the largest.
You're talking about the 22 or 23 counties that's in Vidant's footprint when you
They're
say Eastern?
Eastern North Carolina completely, yes, sir.
Is that
Last
because of
week-
Medicare?
That's because of billing revenues that they have problems with. Yes, sir. That's exactly what that is. Last week, for the major part of the week, you asked a question about the 3 ambulances. I ran 3 ambulances just about all week last week. Twice last week, I had 2 ambulances at Vidant Hospital at the same time.
But you're running that third one with part-time help.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Here,
Look, and keep in mind that the tax monies that we receive from the county, I keep hearing the second set of books. When we sit down for the contract negotiations, that is exactly what we were told to do. We were supposed to take our tax money and place it in one account to pay for the initial 911 truck. Am I correct?
That's correct.
The second set, our second bank account, was to provide any other monies that we had. The tax monies that we receive pay for the 911 truck. Everything else, I've ran 2 trucks since I've been here for $326,000.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask him a question?
Okay.
Mr. Greer, who maintains your checking accounts and your funds?
Our funds all are maintained through the town of Chocowinity.
And who audits your books, Mr.
Who
Greer?
audits our books? They are audited through the state, who are audits towns.
By the town of Chocowinity?
Yes.
So town of Chocowinity-
Same time the town of Chocowinity is audited, our books are audited.
So town of Chocowinity handles all your
Yes.
funds and also conducts the audits using an outside
He
audit?
didn't say that.
Excuse me?
He said whoever audits Chocowinity, audit them as well.
Yeah, that's,
Mr. Chairman.
thank you, Mr. Greer.
Go ahead.
I have 2 things. One, I think everybody knows how functionary these government audits are. They don't really mean anything at the end of the day, because I've dealt with them now for 20 years. So just be aware. Also be aware that Chairman of the Board's daughter keeps the books for the town, so we got a lot of connections. You're really a good buddy system, and I want to make sure that everybody understands that. But the second thing is, let's go back to the goats. I know you're tired of hearing about the goats. Let's go back to them. If all of these other ambulance services are going bankrupt, what makes you think that we're going to start one up here and do better than they're doing? What makes you think that you're going to survive any better than they're going to survive? So, that's another red flag.
Did you call the question?
Mr. Chairman,
I call the question.
Mr. Chairman, the question's been
you going to call the question?
called. All right.
All in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed? All
Go
right,
feed the
6-1.
goats.
Y'all are feeding goats, I'm not. Takes one.
All right, award contract for radio equipment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Just a couple things history-wise regarding this project. As you're aware, this project started in excess of over a year ago. There was a group that was put together by the Board of Commissioners, a radio committee, to look at the issues that were being had or the issues with the existing VHF paging system throughout the county. As you're aware, that entire system is located on one tower in Bath. It is a single point of failure, and we are having issues with it being able to cover the entire county. Back in July of last year, this board unanimously approved to engage the services of Lookout Communications, Mr. Don Cahoon, to help to work with the Radio Communications Committee to put together an RFP and to put that on the street. That RFP was put on the street, and the RFP was written for manufacturers of radio systems. It was done, my understanding is that's the way it was originally done when the system was originally put in place 15, 20 years ago. The request was for radio manufacturers so that the engineering would stand behind the work, and that that would be done in a manner that would be held up and would be done correctly. So that's the way that was put together. There were requests for proposals sent to the three major communications manufacturers: Harris Corporation, E.F. Johnson, and Motorola Solutions. There was a bid opening for that. Prior to that bid opening, there were questions received and taken by both the communications director, the county communications director, and the consultant relating to those questions that came from vendors. There were a fair amount, is my understanding, a fair amount of comments that came from resellers, service providers, and other folks who were not manufacturers of that equipment to ask could they bid, and they were told no, that the specs were written for manufacturers, so that the product would be stood behind, and we wouldn't be chasing one representative to another to find who was going to stand behind the product. When the bids were scheduled to be open, there was a request from one of the vendors to extend it so there could be some more due diligence. That request was approved, and there was an extension period given for additional due diligence by the manufacturers to look at the system, to come in and make sure that they understood what we were looking for and what needed to be done. There was a bid opening established on June the 28th of this year. There were 2 proposals that were received. During the due diligence period, like I say, one of the resellers asked the question, would they be able to bid? They were told that they could bid if they had the backing of the manufacturer. They said that they would take care of that. When bids were received on June the 28th, there were 2 proposals. One was from Motorola, one was from Communications International. Communications International is a reseller of Harris Corporation. They are not a manufacturer of radio systems. At that time, bids were not opened, and the representative from Communications International was instructed that it needed to be from Harris. They said at the time they would take care of that. They would work with Harris to do that. They understood what we were asking. In fact, they had been told previous to the bid to the bids being received that that's what was expected of them. So the bids were postponed. There were certified letters sent out again to the manufacturers, explaining that to them, asking them to rebid. At the next bid opening, instead of the same representatives from Communications International showing up, they sent somebody different this time, and he said the exact same thing. Well, I didn't know that. So their bid was again rejected. So you had only one opportunity for a manufacturer. That was with Motorola Solutions. That bid was opened. You have that information. That bid is for $1.8 million. It's a lot of money for a communication system. It is for a multi-site VHF system that will provide 95% coverage throughout the entire county in buildings for pagers. The issue that we have is if folks are in their house, if they're volunteers, and their pagers don't go off, you can't get coverage. You can't get folks to respond. And as part of the RFP that was written, there were also concerns about building penetration, being able to communicate from actually outside the building into the building for hardened structures like schools, courthouse, places like that, community college, where you could have someone standing in the building and attending to an emergency, and you could have the incident commander standing outside and they couldn't talk to each other. They actually would have to open the doors and yell down the hall, is what we heard some folks say. So as part of this project, there was a solution that was put in place to provide for that communication within those buildings. This project also adds one additional tower that the county would own and operate. It would be on Cherry Run to be able to provide for the coverage in this part of the county. The remaining areas where we're proposing to get on towers, they are Viper towers that are owned by the state of North Carolina. The only thing that we have to do is put the equipment on it. The state of North Carolina would maintain those. Their generators are there, so we're able to save a tremendous amount of money piggybacking off of their existing towers. We were afraid we were going to have to add an additional tower, but we were pleased that the Bayboro Tower opened up, that we could get on that. There were some issues there, and that worked out well, so that saved us a tremendous amount of money. In this project, you have a proposal from Motorola that would provide the system, that would do the checks, and they would guarantee 95% coverage throughout the entire county for building penetration in light buildings for pagers. This was the recommendation that came through the radio committee in working with consultation with the consultant. We also asked Motorola, or we asked the vendors, or we asked Motorola when they were selected as the contractor to give us a leasing solution in case the board wanted to look at leasing that, doing lease payments on it to essentially finance it. They gave us those. You'll see in the packet under item number 2, they did that for a 59-month proposal. Obviously, you don't want to get too far out with those. You want to make sure you're kind of tight on them. We also went in and did our own. Their numbers came back at 2.46. You'll see that we also went out and asked for proposals from local banks. The interest rate that we received, we were able to get an interest rate of 1.42. So we were able to do that a little cheaper locally. So what we've provided for you is, there are obviously 2 questions here. Do you want to move forward with the project? If you do, then how do you want to fund the project? There is not funding in the current budget for this project. It was understood that way when we talked about it in the budget, that we would not have these numbers yet. We had no idea what it would turn out to be, and we would deal with it as it came. So for you, the 2 questions, I guess. First of all, do you want to move forward with the project? Again, this project has been worked on by a lot of folks for about a year and a half, almost 2 years, I believe. So this is kind of the culmination of that. If you do want to move forward with the project, then how you want to pay for it? We've provided you 2 opportunities to do that. You could either pay for it out of fund balance. If you did that, you see the spreadsheet on the back that tells you where you would end up. You would end up, as we understand it, based on our preliminary numbers from the auditor, who's just finished some of their preliminary work, we believe that we will be spending less money, or we spent less money last year than we had anticipated. Of course, when we gave you our numbers in the new budget, we projected that we would spend all of that money, which is what we typically do. Last year, we spent about 95% of our expenditure side, so we didn't spend as much fund balance as we had anticipated spending last year. So if you look at the table on page 326, you'll see where we project you will end up in June 30th of 16 at $17.6 million, which is right at 30%. We had anticipated being a little bit lower than that because we thought we were going to spend more than we did. Of course, when the auditors did their preliminary numbers, they gave us some updated numbers. Now, if you anticipate using fund balance to pay this, then you'll see that top line is what we project. And again, that's considering we spend every bit of the money that's been budgeted this year, which we typically do not. But for us to give you a number, we always want to be as conservative as we can. So we're saying we're going to spend every bit of the money you've budgeted this year, which means you're going to spend the fund balance that you allocated this year. And then you would spend the 1.8 on top of that. And you would end up with 14.8. We're projecting $14.8 million in fund balance on June 30th of 17. That is right at 25% fund balance.
Okay. Well, I think we should address this 2 ways. First of all, if we're going forward.
Okay.
And then we'll talk about financing if it passes. Because beyond that, it would be a waste of time.
Okay, I understand.
Good.
I got some serious problems with this. Not the program itself. I think that this is something that Beaufort County really does need, but I just for the life of me cannot put my hands around spending $1.8 million. That just we've just increased taxes by 2 cents. Our budget is the highest now that it's ever been, and we're getting ready to take $1.8 million out of fund balance. Personally, if I agreed to it, I wouldn't want to finance it. But it's a great program, and what I'd like to see is I'd like to see us postpone this until budget time in June, and see if the price will come down at that time. It may not, but I just I can't support that figure.
Just real quick, if I could respond to that.
Yes.
Just to let you know, Motorola has provided a $415,000 discount on this project if they in order to meet their third quarter goal. So all else being the same, if you postponed, and of course that's totally up to the board. I'm just telling you for all information, so you have a full picture. They have offered that because they want to hit a third quarter goal. So you would have to add that back in. It would be my anticipation.
I just wanted to make it clear. I know there's been a lot of hard work put in this because I was on the committee that started this up. And I think when we first talked about it, we were looking at $1 million, well, so 1.8 now, almost $2 million. And so when I saw those figures, it kind of surprised me, to be honest with you.
Commissioner Buzzio.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I look at this as from a security and safety perspective, both for our first responders, and we've had some examples of that where we couldn't communicate, even truck to truck in some fire situations. I look at this from a security perspective where our law enforcement can't communicate if they're within a school building. And I also look at this as something that's probably should have been done a number of years ago. And the longer we wait, the cost is just going to keep going up. So from two perspectives here. So the first perspective, I'd like to see us move forward on this. And then for the second one, how do we fund it? Do we pay it off in 3 years? Do we take a loan? As you said, we only spent 95% last year in the budget, so it leaves us 5%, which I assume would be enough to cover something like this? Oh, well, it's a guess.
I don't think we can assume that.
No.
But from a security and safety perspective, I would support moving forward on this. It's about time.
Commissioner Booth.
Thank you. Couple of questions, Brian. You said that one of the vendors had to back out because they didn't have the backing of the manufacturer. Explain that to me. That's part one.
When the request was, when the specifications were put out there, the specifications were that manufacturers of radio systems, that we would receive bids from manufacturers of radio systems. We would not receive bids from resellers, from service providers, from third-party vendors. We would go to Ford to get the car. We would go to Chevy. I mean, we wouldn't get it from somebody else. We would say, if you are the manufacturer, you're the ones who's providing the bid. And in the conversations, and of course, I'm sure Mr. Coon would be glad to address any of those, because he and Vic took the comments from folks asking those questions. Were they going to be allowed to do that? Because what they would simply do is go to the manufacturer and get their price, and then add theirs and do whatever they need to do to submit. And because we wanted to make sure that the engineering stood behind, because essentially when it's all said and done, if it doesn't work, the contract is such that Motorola's got to make it right. You know, it has to provide 95% like they've specified in their contract. And if it doesn't, then they've got to fix it. That's exactly what happened with the system years ago, is my understanding. I wasn't here, but it's my understanding from Vic that there were some issues. In fact, Don worked on that project. That when they tested it, there were some issues, and they sent an engineering team from Motorola down here. They spent Labor Day weekend, I think, is what I understood, fixing it, making sure it was right, and standing behind their their contract.
Another second part to it is Commissioner Breen stayed to wait till budget time going. So my understanding from what you said to him was if we wait, this project will not cost 1.8, it'll cost 2.2.
I don't know what it will cost,
Or
because
more.
you would rebid it and you would ask, I mean, obviously, they're not gonna hold their price.
You're getting a $450,000 discount.
For 124. And my understanding from them is I mean, obviously, they're working on quotas, they're trying to hit their third quarter goal, and when you do those things, they provide a discount. But I don't know what that cost would be. I mean, it's conceivable it may go down, but it's also conceivable it may go up. I don't know. I don't know.
Well, according, if it wasn't for the discount today, according to what you're telling us, it would be 2.2 right now.
It would be 2.2, yes, sir.
Commissioner Belcher.
Ron, I'm gonna ask you a question you may not know the answer to, and it's fine if you don't, but it's my understanding that one of those education bonds is paid off next year. Is that right?
It is.
How much was the revenue stream each year on that bond?
Well, the payment on the bond's $450,000.
$450,000 each year.
Yes.
That's the solution to your problem, right there. If you take this thing and finance it at 1.42.
Mr. Chairman.
I'm
Mr.
talking
Chairman, we
about
need to stick to the subject. We're talking about financing, and you directed that we would decide
All right,
whether we're
I'll
going to
wait.
proceed with
Okay,
this
I'll
before
wait.
we do this, so.
I'll wait.
Yeah.
But it should be known that there's gonna be money available if Brian and Anita say there is.
Okay, now,
We have had that conversation.
I got one more question.
All right, I'll wait, but I wanna go back to it.
Okay.
Right.
all right, well, first of all, I want to say this. First of all, this radio system, I would classify it as part of the county's infrastructure. And Beaufort County right now has a failing infrastructure system. There are so many things that are getting old that need to be replaced. My second comment is, for 14 years, I was a deputy sheriff. I know what it's like to key that mic and nothing. That is a terrible, terrible feeling. Somebody might be a half a mile away, 2 miles away. They might be 100 yards down the street from you. But when you key that mic and it's nothing, you are totally on your own. Now, I say that from a law enforcement officer's perspective, but then you flip it for somebody who's on fire or rescue, that same eerie feeling when you key that mic and there is nothing. It's time for this county to start moving forward and stop stepping back. We have got to move forward. When people come to an area, they look at schools, law enforcement, and your health care, and then they'll look at the rest of the community. And if we are failing in those areas, we are simply failing. So it is time for us to move forward. All right, who hasn't had a say?
Mr. Chairman.
We'll go with Frank.
Okay.
One of the questions I asked Vic when I got the agenda item is how much it was going to cost for that one tower, and the tower came in at $520,000. My experience when I was on the board of directors of Tri-County Broadband is that any time we priced out a tower, we were looking at $400,000 to $500,000. So I mean, that's a big part of this budget that we're talking about. When I was running for county commissioner, I was at Beaufort Community College one day when they had the Bunyan Fire Department and one of the EMS squads out there, and they were talking to people, and one of the things that they said was, my pager may go off right here at Beaufort Community College. It may go off, or it may not go off. Now, when you get down to Pike Road, North Carolina, in Punga Rivers territory, the chances are we're going to miss it. We're not going to get that call. It's just like the chairman said, this is part of our infrastructure. I don't want a deputy sheriff or a first responder to show up and not be able to talk back and get help. And this county is very big. And it's one of these expenses that we kick down the road and we kick down the road. But it was a request that came up 2 years ago, and here we are 2 years later, and we want to kick it to the next budget process. And I think that's a mistake. I think that one of the things that our citizens really expect us to do is make sure that they're safe and secure as possible. And we're not going to be able to, to cover 99% of the problems that are out there, but we ought to do our best in a fiduciary responsibility as elected officials to make this thing happen. And putting it off is not an answer. That's a cop-out as far as I'm concerned, because we have the money and or we can finance it, either one. That's another question. But I'm going to support moving forward with this project.
Commissioner Richardson.
Well, Mr. Chairman, there's no question the present system we have needs improving, but by the same token, you can't deny that the system is, while it may not be working perfectly, it's been working for quite a number of years, just like it is now. So, are you willing to spend almost $2 million to get 10% of improvements, what this thing comes down to? I have a problem with this. This thing started off, it was explained to me, as a performance-based set of specifications. And the specifications were set what I thought was very high, and they are very high. But there's a lot of ways that you can solve the problem and meet those specifications other than the way that we are doing it. There's about $5 million in here for various towers and things. If you look at the map on the towers, I mean, we've got towers that are in Grantsboro that we've got to spend $300,000 on. We got a tower at Grassy Ridge in Hyde County we got to spend $300,000 on. We got two over here close to the Pitt County line. Whereas at the moment, we've got one tower at White Post in the middle of the county. And if you say that tower can reach 25 miles, there's Beaufort County. Watch. Show you some magic. Gee, that one tower covers the whole county. Maybe not well, but there are other ways to get the coverage. Schools, for instance, typically use repeaters. Cost about $3,500 to $4,000 a piece. They don't cost $300,000 to improve these towers. If you draw a 25, let me show you where these towers are going to be. This right here is White Post in the middle of the county. You're going to have a tower on the Pitt County line, something, not a tower necessarily, but a unit that's transmitting, two of them on the Pitt County line. You've got one all the way down here in Bayboro, and you've got one across the county line over in Hyde County. If you draw 25-mile circles around those, we're covering almost all eastern North Carolina from our equipment. That's really not necessary. You should be able, as Commissioner Brin indicated, you should be able to solve this whole problem for less than $1 million. The reason that it has not been solved for less than $1 million is we have a single bidder. Single bidders are red flags. When you see that, you need to pay attention, because the restrictions on the bidder was unusually tough. The consultant is a Motorola distributor who helped write the specifications. Okay, I've got it in writing, signed by you, by the way. So, and I've got it with me. So we need to send this back, and we need to find a way to get more people bidding to see what the innovations are for solving this problem. And if you take a look at repeaters in the 7 or 8 schools or 9 schools that we have at $4,000 a piece, say, I just hiked that rate, and you look at maybe having 2 more repeaters in the county that are up on water tanks that we already own, that $300,000 a piece, you're getting down into the range that people thought this was going to cost to fix it to begin with. What is being proposed is a serious overkill of our problem. There's no question about it. We need to send it back, and we need to entice more people to bid. So what, from the standpoint of a single company manufacturing all the components to it? All of this electronic stuff, as anybody that knows anything about electronics knows that it's assembled from everything on God's earth to put the items together. Now, here's the thing about it. The smart part of this is if you have other people that are assembling systems for you, we write the specs and the contract in such a way that the county is protected. If we're not smart enough to do this, these kind of contracts happen every day, all over the world, in all kinds of places, not just here, then, we need to really go back to school. I'm going to read my statement, and then I'm going to be quiet. I can't support this in the form that it's in. It should be sent back for rebid, and we should entice as many bidders as we can get so that we can look at the alternatives, and we're going to learn a lot of things when we look at the alternatives. I'm not a communications guy, but from an engineering standpoint, we have solved this problem in the most expensive way that we can solve it. And other people will have some other ideas about how to do this. Oh, wait a minute. I got chocolate one at the EMS here. Gee, we don't need to go through that again. Here we go. There's only one bidder. A proposed contract. I haven't seen a proposed contract. I don't know what the performance standards are. I don't know how we can go back on the Motorola distributor when the system doesn't work. Just as Ms. Lay told us at the beginning of the meeting, commissioners can't approve contracts that we don't have in our hands and we haven't seen. That can lead to a lot of trouble. As a matter of fact, it's against the law. That contract's not in this package tonight, so I don't think we can approve this thing anyway. The system presented is a gross overkill. There are a total of 5 transmitters. Presently, we have one that does the job, not perfectly, but it does the job. There are multiple ways to provide the desired services for less than half of what is proposed. Alternatives, both the desires of county staff and the design of the system have not been examined. The proof of this statement is that we only have one bid presented. It was a performance bid, remember that. When you bid, you solved the problem to meet the standard of the 95% plus the being able to talk into schools, and you could solve that however you wanted to, and the county was going to take a look at it and see what the most economical and the best thing to do is. We haven't done that. We have not even come close to that. So the way that the bids were sent out was contrary to what the county said that we wanted to do. The entire project should be re-examined, rebid, based on the desired performance of the proposed system without regard to the business structure of the bidder. The protection of Beaufort County can be handled by guarantees of the bidders and or with bonding of various types. The possibility of providing single system, probably Viper, has not been examined by the Board of Commissioners. This system provides 2 systems. It provides a VHF, and a UHF. Currently, the firemen are using a VHF system. Viper is what the state of North Carolina has gone to. It is the Cadillac. They've been working on this since about '95 of getting more and more of these towers installed and going to this. So why can't the firemen use the Viper system too? Why can't the EMS use the Viper system too? We have not examined that. So I think the case is clear that the alternatives by this board have not been examined on this particular item, and it goes back to the secret of getting more than one bidder. You've got to have multiple bidders in order to get the best price and the best system for Beaufort County. My motion, is there a motion on the floor?
Not yet.
My motion is that we send this back and that we engage multiple bidders without the requirement that one manufacturer has to manufacture everything that goes in it.
Have a motion, is there a second?
Second.
Have a second discussion.
Mr. Chairman, got a question. Was it not possible for other manufacturers to bid on this project?
It was.
Why didn't they bid?
We sent it back. I don't know.
There was 2 opportunities to do it.
They just
They just didn't do it.
just didn't do it?
Yeah, we sent it back.
Single bidders are always fishy.
All right.
Well,
Okay, go ahead.
I think the public needs to understand this. Let's don't get camouflaged into some of the conversation. There was other manufacturers that had a chance to bid on it, and they chose not to. I mean, the fact that it said 95%, that the other ones apparently didn't think they could make it happen. And that's a pretty high ratio. But I can tell you, if you're in that other 5%, you're going to wish you had 100% when something goes down.
And I can tell you that This was bidded twice.
That's what I thought. We sent it back
It was
last
twice, same results. So there's not a question about everybody didn't have the opportunity. The opportunity was there, but they chose not to bid. And so as far as I'm concerned, it's null and void. We need to move on. All right, all in favor?
Mr. Chairman,
of
can I just say, clarify one question?
Okay.
I think this is right. When the original system was put in 15 years ago, or however long ago it was, the spec at that time was 95%. So 95% in the street is a pretty standard specification. It is not way up high here. It's pretty much the standard at which you want the system to be able to work. It was the standard in which the original system was put in. So I mean, when you say 95 is high, 95 is the standard.
No. 95 is just for out here. What about getting inside of these buildings? When you increase the standard to having to get inside the buildings and you're putting all these towers around Beaufort County to get inside the building, we're talking about two different standards.
We're talking about 95% in light structures, so that when I'm sitting at home, I'm a volunteer fireman, and I'm sitting at home asleep in my bed, my pager goes off in my house. That's what the spec is, 95% in light structures. Now, there were what we looked at in order, and this was in front of the radio committee, and in fact, so I'd like to address a couple things that were mentioned. And Don's here can correct me if I say anything wrong. This was discussed with the radio committee about the Viper system, and why don't you just? In fact, there was a long discussion at one of the meetings about that. Why don't you just put everybody on Viper? That's the best way to do it. You can't page off of Viper. Now, let me correct. You can page off of Viper, but it costs about $4,000 for the radio for every fireman to have, to be able to page off of it. $800 doesn't allow you to page except for a very expensive piece of equipment that you'd have put on the hip of every fireman. Now, contrast that to a $200 Minotaur, 350 Minotaur that goes on your belt with the VHF system. So you've got to unless you really want to spend a ton of money, you've got to maintain VHF for paging. We currently have VHF radios in all the fire departments. The infrastructure is in for that. If we were to change and go to Viper, first of all, we'd have to put a $4,000 radio on everybody's hip so they could hear, and then we'd also have to go in and redo all the radios we currently have. So the group looked at, was it best to use the existing infrastructure and upgrade that and make it right, or did it make sense to go to Viper? I assure you that was a long conversation that was had with the group, and it was financially it made the most sense to use what we have, because then we wouldn't have to replace all the things we had. We wouldn't have to completely change everything we had. Now, we are using Viper towers. Now, when you say there are towers outside the county, those are state-owned towers that we've been given permission to put our equipment on. The state maintains those towers. The state maintains the generators that run those towers, and all of the infrastructure there. We're simply putting our equipment on those towers, which saves us a tremendous amount of money. I think that we're building one tower for ourselves, and that is at $500. It is $119,000 for the microwave, where we have to have microwaves that run all around so that you get simulcast across the entire county, so you hear everything. There's the tower and the shelter and the generator, which is $204, site development, for a total of $520,000 for one tower. Now, that's the one tower. All the other towers are just us putting equipment on that and the state looking after it otherwise. So we were very lucky in the fact that we were able to do that. Motorola and did the coverage maps of where the radio propagation studies, now, and this is way up here for me. But what their engineers, their radio communication engineers, the guys that do this, ladies that do this for a living, run those propagation studies to know exactly what it takes to cover an area. We asked them to look at every tower that we owned, every water tower that we owned. We asked them to look at that. We asked them to look at others. And they were unable because of the height. You got to get up high to be able to get the signal out and to be able to cover the entire county. There are a lot of low-lying areas, and there are a lot of areas that we've got to be able to reach. So from the perspective that the Communications Committee worked on this, and the specs and the consultants work on it, and I would say Mr. Cahoon works for the county on this project. He's not being paid by Motorola. We have a contract with him to do the work for us. And there are no kickbacks, there are no side arrangements, there's no anything. And I think he will stand up and raise his right hand to that. So the insinuation that that's the case, I need to say that's not the case. So, you know, you have the opportunity to look at this, and do as you please with it. But there's some things that need to be cleared up, and I just want to take an opportunity to do that.
All right, we're going to call the question.
Well, I want to go back to and address one thing before we call the question. The 95% thing, there's a provision in here that you have to be able to stand inside of a school and talk to the sheriff's office, wherever it is, through these repeaters. That is one of the reasons that you have so many towers. There's other ways to solve these problems.
The structures, the infrastructure that's being put in those school buildings, you see on this page is $22,000. And what that allows is you to be able to get outside of that school building. It's not that we're adding towers because of that. It's simply that we've got to get outside that building. So that's, and in fact, they were a whole lot higher originally when we had some conversations about how we best did that.
Okay, all in favor of Commissioner Richardson's motion, raise your right hand. Whoops. Wait a minute, raise it back up so I can see. All opposed? It failed 2-5.
So we're back to where we started.
All right.
Moving forward.
Now, concerning the awarding the contract, is there a motion?
I'll make that motion, Mr.
We
Chairman.
have a motion, is there a second?
Second.
We have a second. Now, any further discussion?
I want to pose an objection to this. You don't even have a contract in your hands to award.
We're in court.
You know, you're going to be in court. The contract is not in here. This contract does not state the performance standards. I haven't seen it in these papers. If it is, please show it to me.
It is not currently included because there's some conversations we're having. There was a request by the communications director to make a change in something regarding some payment options. There was also a question that came from the county attorney regarding one of the, there was a misprint on one of the items. So we are in the process of getting those straightened out, and we'll be glad to bring that back to you at a special call meeting if you'd like for us to do that, so you can approve the actual contract. What we're looking for is an opportunity to, if you want us to move forward with the project.
I'll call the motion, Mr. Chairman.
And you get
All right, all in favor of that motion, raise your right hand. All opposed? 5-2. All right, now, concerning the funding. My personal opinion is we have the money. I say just pay for it. But we'll hear from everybody else.
Well, if you're gonna do this, then you need to just pay for it up front. I mean, that'll be good. You don't have to sit there and pay all that interest over a period of 3 or 4 years or 59 months, whatever you decide to lease it out at. So if you're gonna do it, just pay for it up front. I'm not gonna agree with it one way or the other, but if you're gonna do it, that's the way to do it.
Thanks for sharing it with us. I like, I mean, this is not gonna happen in the next 6 months. And I like Mr. Bester's approach. You got probably $425,000 that you're gonna have coming in funds that you don't have to spend again. In probably 3 years, that is for probably 3.5 years, you pay this project off. I mean, but it's gotta be done, and it doesn't matter, but I really like his approach, the way that he talked about it.
Anybody else?
Well, I just want to take objection to this business about financing. You know, it's almost like, it's like people that don't manage their money very well. They base their whole life based on payments, and when I'm rid of this payment, then I can buy something else because I've got another payment available that I can make. That's not money management at all. And I really take exception to the fact that because we're paying something off that we can buy something else. That is not the way that you manage any business.
I think what we need to do is, as I said before, if you're gonna do it anyway, go ahead and pay for it, and then let that $400,000 a year off that bond go back into the fund balance.
Talk about apples and oranges. This is a
It's the same money.
It's a useless conversation.
Frankie?
I've been on here 2 years, and I've seen the numbers change, and I'm a little bit reluctant to do 100% of it at this point in time. I'd like to mix what we're saying and pay for half of it, and then have two annual installments, not monthly payments, but demand that we go with 2 annual installments. That would be the equivalent of, well, half of it would be 450, 425, 450 a year. And then if our numbers are real a year from now, we see it fit, we can always pay it off. There's no prepayment penalty on any of these deals that are in here.
Mr. Chairman?
That don't give me any heartburn.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, that gives us a combination of what Commissioner Ward has said and what Commissioner Belcher said. So I would favor that initiative.
All right. That settles it.
Make a motion.
I make a motion that we pay for half of it, and then we finance the other half over a 2-year period with annual installments.
Okay.
I'll just say that in all my years, 17 years experience, I've never known a bank to do that type of installment financing. I'm not saying that they won't. I mean, typically, the amortization it's paid back on a monthly basis.
It'll drive the interest rate up a little bit, but I'm just thinking in terms of, working into the budget next year, it will be easier for us to, instead of making these payments over the next 7 months, that if we have an annual installment, I would think that if we're paying for half of it up front, that we should be able to get those kind of terms from somebody that's on this list.
I mean, I'd
Chairman.
have to go back out there, I would think, and put it back out there for bid based on those terms.
Well,
And see what we-
here again, I'll take the part out about the annual payments, but I'd like to see you do that. I won't restrict you to it, but I would think that if you're paying half of it, my experience is that you can pretty well demand, the interest rate's gonna be just a tad higher, but, right now, I think that's the route I would go, or recommend that we go.
Commissioner Belcher?
Asked Brian on this loan with BB&T, how much was that? Was that loan for the whole amount, or how much?
It was for the whole amount,
For the whole amount?
for 59 months.
You pay half of it.
We matched the financing terms with Motorola. So we were
If you-
talking apples to apples.
If you pay half of it up front, like Frankie says, your payments for 2 years are not gonna be much different than what you got on this thing, because you have 59 months to start with, so you're gonna have that to 29. So, I don't see anything wrong with doing the monthly payment on it.
And I don't either. I'm just saying that I think that we should go back and ask them if we're paying half of it, if we can go with annual installments, because it fits in better with our cash flow management. See what they say. Not gonna cost you anything to ask that question.
So if that is the case, then we are not making a decision on the financing. Am I correct?
And if you'd like for us to bring that back to you at a special call meeting, we can do that.
Is that the pleasure of the board?
Well,
Why don't you change your motion so we get it out of the way?
I'll remove the annual payments, finance it over 2 years.
I mean, I
We
still
would still
think
need to go
I've
back
I've
out.
got to go back
You should
and
gotta go back either way.
on bids, just because you've changed the terms. They weren't the original terms.
It would take us about a week.
Okay. But in the banking world, if you shorten the term, the rate should come down. I'm assuming this 1.42 is fixed.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure that we're gonna get a better rate than 1.42. I was really
I agree.
shocked at 1.42.
I think you're right.
Don't shake the tree.
Right, we would just want to go back out, since we put it out to start with and received, since we've changed the terms, we'd like to go back out with it.
Otherwise, your bankers are not gonna wanna bid, folks. That's what they're telling you. You gotta be up front with these people.
What kind of motion do we need? Get this.
Well, I mean, you're saying for us to do it, we've got to be tying in the monthly payments and the interest rate, the whole 9 yards, okay? So we've got to wait. We've got to wait if they're going to go back and do it.
So was there a motion made? There hasn't been a motion.
There was a motion that was.
Or will you withdraw your motion?
Yes, I'll do
All right.
that.
We'll,
I was gonna offer a little bit of background about why we recommended appropriating fund balance and paying cash for the project, because, I mean, 1.42% is a great rate. But that is about $65,000 in interest over the 59 months. So when we were looking ahead at, you know, the next budget we're facing and the next year after that, we started this year with a $900,000 hole. We appropriated $900,000 in fund balance to balance the current year budget. So we know that we will be faced with that hole going in next year's budget. So when Mr. Belcher brought up the point, we've got $450,000 worth of, you know, debt service falling off from the school bonds. We realize that, but we are going to use that money to fill half of that hole we're starting with. So our thoughts were, we're not going to be able to work this annual debt service of $380,000 into our budget. We just don't feel like we're going to be able to fit that in there with a recurring revenue stream or reducing a recurring expense in order to cover that. We knew we would have to appropriate fund balance to make the debt service anyway in the future years. So our thoughts were, if we know we're going to have to use fund balance to meet this debt service over the next 59 months, we might as well just go ahead and bite the bullet, spend the money at one time and save the interest. So that was kind of our thoughts behind the fund balance appropriated.
Mr. Chairman, you want to entertain another motion?
yes, sir.
I
Withdrawing
move.
your old.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. I move we take the recommendation of our chief financial officer and our county manager to go ahead and pull down the fund balance and fund this project with no finance.
And we have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion now?
I got one question.
Yes, sir.
I know it might not be a good, I'm not gonna get an answer I wanna hear, but is there any CDBG money or any kind of grant money out there we can find for this project? Thank you.
Let me just ask one quick
Thank
question. The way you answered the question and presented that, and I don't have a problem with it, you're planning a continuation budget next year. Okay.
Well, and again, the budget process that we're talking about is, unless the board tells us differently, we're going to provide for you what it takes to continue to provide the existing services you are providing today, next year.
Okay.
It's not a continuation budget in that we're going to continue spending more on top of more. We're saying, unless the board tells us differently, what services this county is providing this year, we're going to tell you how much it's going to cost to provide those same services next year.
I understand.
Okay.
Well, I got one thing,
I had to ask.
and then we can vote. But I think that the board passed I don't know what the terminology would be, but a resolution to keep the fund balance around 35%. And this was done, I think, 4.5 or 5 years ago. And if we do this project, the fund balance will draw down to 21.25%. 25, excuse me, 25%. And so we're violating our own rules.
I don't remember that.
That was a policy.
And there was some discussion, and
That can
again,
be
this is the
changed.
board's discussion, there was some discussion during budget time this year whether you thought 35 was too high. There was some conversation about it being 25, there was some conversation about it being 30, I think. But it is a policy that you've said, and it allows you to adjust that as you need to. It really is not a hard and fast
No, it wasn't the law.
rule. It's a recommendation.
Well, what I'm saying is, if we're gonna do this, we need to change the policy.
Well, I think that, like I say, there was some discussion during budget time this year as to whether you wanted to change that policy anyway. We just never got to a resolution on that. But there was some conversation about, was 35 too high? Were you holding too much? Did you need to bring some down? Did you need to be 30, 25?
Well, since I've been a commissioner, it's been 20, it's been 25, so, you know, it's
15.
swung
We've been
all over
lower.
the place.
15.
Yeah, it's lower, that's right.
Mr. Chairman?
You're right.
Yes, sir.
During the budget workshop, I'm the one that threw the 25 and the 30 out there. I had a 2-hour conversation with the former county manager and the former chief financial officer. And I asked them, as a new commissioner, what did I need to look at as it got to that? And the county manager, former county manager, says, I'll go first because my number's going to be different than the chief financial officer, which I expected that. He said 25%. And then I looked at the former chief financial officer and I said, okay, what? Because you have to balance and you have to make sure the cash flow is there. And he said 30%. Because this business is like every business. There is a low point where if you don't have the cash, you've got to have a line of credit with the bank. But that gave me a lot of comfort in 25 to 30%. And I think that, you know, and I think you two would say the same thing. I think our target is what it says. It's a target policy. It doesn't say it's a policy. I mean, that it's, you know, we're going to get slapped on our hand if we go below 35 or if we go below 30.
All the questions.
All right, all in favor of Commissioner Waters' motion, raise your right hand. All opposed? 6-1. That's it.
I voted for it because it's the cheapest thing for the county to shore up this mistake with.
That's a bad, go ahead on, boy.
We're gonna
be at recess.
We don't care.
He's a mouse.
All right, we're back in session. I'm going to change the agenda a little bit. I'm going to allow Ms. Creasman to come on and so she can go home. That'll be items 6 and 7.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. On February 1st, 2016, the Beaufort County Board of Commissioners approved the request to enter into a contract with Johnson's Personnel Consulting, Inc. for the revision of the Beaufort County Personnel Manual. Sylvia Johnson of Johnson Personnel Consulting is nearing completion of the manual revisions. Upon recommendations from Mrs. Johnson and Brian Alligood, a committee has been established by the Human Resource Manager that will represent various departments within the county. The committee will meet with Mrs. Johnson, the Human Resource Manager, and the County Manager to discuss and review the revisions and make recommendations for changes and/or additions. We feel that it would be beneficial to include a county commissioner in this process before the manual is presented for the board for approval. The recommendation is to select a commissioner to participate in the committee to review revisions to the Beaufort County Personnel Manual.
Okay. Well, I'm going to nominate myself for that. I'll retire in 17 days, so I'll have something new to do.
I think each commissioner should be sent the draft, though. I mean, I don't have Jerry review it, but, I would like to see what the first
that's
pass
fine.
is.
Yeah. That's good.
And
Very good.
let him do the talking. I'll call him if I have a problem.
So moved.
All right.
All right, we have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor of me? Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. The second issue is to award a contract to the MAPS Group for the comprehensive classification and pay study. On June 6th of 2016, the Beaufort County Board of Commissioners adopted the 2016-2017 annual budget for Beaufort County. The budget included appropriations in the amount of $40,000 under the Non-Departmental Cost Center for a comprehensive classification and pay study. The study will include orientation sessions with employees and management, preparation of a new salary plan with a focus on eliminating and/or correcting inequity issues, new class specifications for each position classification, and identification of FLSA status and implementation of the new FLSA overtime laws that become effective January 1, 2017. The MAPS group quoted a price of $25,240 to complete our study. Endorsed by the North Carolina League of Municipalities, the MAPS group has worked with a large number of cities and counties, including Beaufort County, and comes highly recommended. Their group consists of highly qualified human resource professionals with much experience in state and local government human resources management. And you've got attached a client list. You can see the counties and cities that the MAPS group has worked with, and also a list of credentials for the members of the group. Other quotes received included Springstead Incorporated at $36,100, Piedmont Triad Regional Council of Governments, $48,100, and the Archer Company, $44,500. We recommend to hire the MAPS Group Management and Professional Services Group to conduct a comprehensive classification and pay study for Beaufort County and approve a purchase order in the amount of $25,240.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Have a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
One question.
Yes, sir.
We're going to have a review process from their report for commissioners.
Yes.
We can.
Yes, they're just putting together a draft plan for you.
Because most of the time, these things don't work out, haven't worked out very well in the past, although I like some of the problems they're going to be solving concerning pay and the new laws and that sort of things.
Okay, 7-0.
All right. Thank you.
Hi, Martin.
Good evening, Commissioners. Here again to talk about the Commerce Fellows Capacity Building Grant and updating our current plans and policies related to drawing down those funds. As you remember, this is a $50,000 grant, which is to assist local municipalities and county staff to pay for training costs. So to comply with federal guidelines to draw down the funds, we need to update our Beaufort County Equal Employment Plan, our Beaufort County Procurement Plan, Beaufort County Fair Housing Policy, Section 3 Plan, Language Access Plan, and the Section 504 Self-Evaluation Plan. The last time we updated these plans was in 2009. So what I ask for is, if you would please, pass a motion to adopt the aforementioned plans and policies to allow the county to draw down funds so the county and municipal staff can attend the upcoming Commerce Fellows Capacity Building Grant training sessions.
So moved.
Have a motion
Second.
and a second.
One question, none of these are new plans.
These are updates of federal.
Existing
Yes.
plans.
Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed? 7-0. Thank you.
And I assume that would allow Chairman Langley to sign the plan. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, just one note on this project. We'll be having a budget amendment at the next meeting. And since there are no county dollars involved, we'll probably just stick that on the consent agenda. I did not have the grant agreement in time to know how to set it up for this meeting.
When?
Good evening, Commissioners. Before I begin the issue with the contract renewal or the rollover of the contract, I kind of wanted to tie up a little bit of the end of the fiscal year, just to let you know a few of the numbers at the time, which I know you get the reports on them. We ended June 30th, with a county collected rate of 97.87. That's the highest we've ever had. Previously, when I reported to the board, it was only county figure that was reported. Once we went to the new system, I was reporting all money that had been collected for all jurisdictions. So I wanted to make y'all aware of that. That's 3 years in a row we've increased that figure. We've gone from 95.67 when I started to 97.87. So I really want to speak highly of my staff. They've really done what needs to be done. And I just wanted to bring that up tonight, just so you gentlemen know that we're putting the effort into trying to collect these back taxes. Tonight, what I have to present to you gentlemen is the rollover contract for Zacchaeus Legal Services. And basically, in the contract, which was done in 2013, February 2013, the contract was set. There's a rollover clause to it that allows a 2-year continuance of the current rates and everything that is in the current contract. I will be honest with you gentlemen, the first time I saw this contract was this year. It just miraculously, nobody had it. We could not locate this contract. But what I wanted to do was, number one, present this contract to you gentlemen so it would be a public record. There would be it. Katie would have a copy. I would have a copy of it. But I also wanted to present this to you tonight for review. I will answer any questions that you have over this current contract and go forward as you direct me to go forward with it.
What is the pleasure of the board? We're just renewing the contract that we've had up till now without any change.
It's a rollover, Commissioner. We have to let him know within 90 days of the end of the year before the contract comes up. With the contract coming up February of next year, we had till October 1st if we wanted to send a letter or do something with this contract. Now, I will say this too. The numbers that we have turned over to Mark for foreclosure cases have gone down. And I've done that on purpose because due diligence needed to be put into anything that's turned over. You know, I want to make sure letters are sent out. We've exhausted every means possible for collecting the back taxes. You know, well, under the previous system, if I ran a delinquency report, it would be about that big. That's about 12 to 14 inches for just a delinquency report. Now I can run it on my system and see it immediately. I send out letters multiple times during the year. We do the pre-foreclosure letters. We let people know this is the next step we're going to do. We do about 6 contacts with the people if we can't garnish. So the opportunities are given there to the people. But I want to make sure what we do is correct. I want to make sure that we put in the effort we need to do it. This past year, we only sent over about 80 for foreclosure. You know, the first year I got here, we sent over about 300. And my understanding of the system has grown so that I understand now what needs to be done. I didn't have the system that I have today. So thank you, gentlemen, for allowing that system to be put in, because that has really helped me. But to make sure, I have to make sure the due diligence is done in my office.
Well, this is,
Hold on.
I appreciate you saying that you do the due diligence. And as I talked to you earlier this evening right here about it, there's one other thing that bothers me gravely about our tax policy. I hate to look on that report and see somebody owes $75, $80, and it's sent to Zacchaeus. I appreciate you minimizing that. I really do. Another thing that bothers me really, really bad is when I look up and you see somebody that you know and about 75 or 80 years old, and they are on that list. I think we have hammered this for several years since I've been here, that if these people are 75 and 80 years old and owe $200, there are other ways of getting their money than putting that extra $750, $800 on them. And I appreciate you minimizing that to where you told me you had done it. Thank you.
Yes, sir. And just to address that before, I think I told Commissioner Booth earlier, it was assignment 30 or 31, and I got to go back and look, was my first assignment here. So previous assignments, this may have been used as a tool to help with collections. But like you say, tacking the additional money on may not have been the correct way to do it, but, you know, I'm here nor there. I've got to go forward with what I have. And so we're going to make sure that when it's turned over, everything legal has been done.
Thank you.
Commissioner Brand.
This is a 4-year contract.
No, it's only a 2-year rollover. The last page,
It says here February the 13th, 2013 to February the 12th, 2017.
yes, sir, but I'm going to read you number 17 on the aspect of it, and on the contract, I'm sorry. The agreement shall be for this period, which is February 13th of 2013 through February 12th of 2017. After the initial term set out above, this agreement shall renew itself automatically for 2-year terms unless either party shall give written notice no less than 90 days prior to the end of the current year. What I want to do is take these next 2 years and clean up as much of the old stuff as we possibly can. And I will let you gentlemen know, and I've let Brian know, there's only 2 legal firms in the state that deal with this. So just to let you know, Mr. Bardell handles pretty much 20 counties. There's a group out of Asheville that's just now getting into it, but that's where we're at.
Anything further?
No,
Is there a motion?
so moved.
Second.
We have a motion, second. No further discussion. All in favor, raise your right hand. 7-0.
Thank you.
Seth?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and board members. Our first item tonight, we've got a no-wake zone request initiated by some folks that live on Little Creek. This is a very small tributary of Blunch Creek, about a mile upstream from the mouth of the Creek Bridge, Road Bridge. As some of y'all may know, a no-wake zone application may only be submitted to the state by the governing municipality or counties. In this case, it would be the county. I've done everything that I can from a staff level up to this point. I've contacted Wildlife, let them know that we've gotten this request. Their enforcement staff does an investigation of the site to determine if they feel like there are hazards to navigation, and then they let us know. They replied a few weeks ago that their investigation determined that there is in fact hazardous conditions there, and that they would recommend moving forward with the no-wake zone application. If with the board's direction, the next step would be for staff to advertise a public hearing. This could be for y'all's next meeting, October meeting. Give the public a chance to come in and comment. No objections. Staff would have typed up a resolution of the board requesting WRC to proceed with the application. And then at that point, it's turned over to the state. Their internal review can take up to 6 months. And then if it comes back, then the county will be responsible for permitting, which would be a CAMA major permit, and then buying a pair of buoys or a piling, having those installed.
Who paid for the buoys?
The county.
No, wait a minute. No. In the past, we have required whoever wanted a no-wake zone to erect the signs and pay for the signs. The county has not been paying for that.
That's what I was asking.
Yeah, my experience would.
The buoy or whatever the sign is or whatever the notice is, they erect it and they pay for it.
Okay. This will be the first one that I've handled. However the board wanted to.
That's our way.
I think the Wildlife Commissioner put them up.
They may put them up, but whatever the expense is that goes with that has not been on the county. Now, I want to say this, I'm not necessarily opposed to this, but I'm very familiar with that little gut. I'm very familiar with the shoreline of that gut, and it's got a hardwood swamp for the most part that comes right down to the edge of the water, so there's not much chance of erosion in there. There are not that many people that have houses that front on this thing, and I'm surprised that people want a no-wake zone in there because you can't hardly turn a boat around.
And I think their issue is that it is very shallow, it's narrow, there's several turns, and they've got 8 or 10 boat docks on there now. But the popularity of wave runners that can achieve high speed and almost zero linear footage, they're getting kids or young people coming through there real high rate of speed, and you've got these boats that can barely
Oh,
turn
okay.
around because
All
it's
right,
super
you're making
shallow.
sense. It's just that it's so small that it's.
And they've said that the folks that brought this to us had me over. We walked out on the dock, and the channel, which is a small part toward the far side, maybe 1.5 feet, 2 foot deep, and a lot of it's super. So they've got their engines trimmed up. They're sort of in a precarious situation, as they explained to me, and then you get a wave runner come around the corner at 40 knots, and you got a potential for an issue.
Well, there's a total of 20, I counted, it looked like 21 lots, residential lots in there.
Yeah, I would say at least that many, yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman,
It looks like maybe half of them are developed at this point.
to ask a question, how in the past has the board addressed that on the payment side? Was it assessed? Was it?
They deal with wildlife or wherever they have to get these. None of our staff puts time into it.
No, I mean.
We just get it approved. We just do the prep stuff, and once it goes to the state and the state says wonderful, then it's on them.
Okay.
I know that
Signs
in Broad Creek,
Signs the same way, yeah.
in Broad Creek, they wanted a no-wake zone in there, and they drove their own piling.
Yeah, we
And
told
Hunter-
them we would
Yeah,
approve it, but
exactly.
but we weren't going to any of the expense of maintaining signs. If the sign falls down, don't call us. You know, that's your problem.
Enforcement too?
Yep, and the enforcement, we don't call us about enforcement, call wildlife.
Yeah, we don't have any way to enforce it. Okay.
Okay.
With the board's direction, I can move forward with the application
Is
process.
there a motion?
So moved.
Second. Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed, 7-0. Your next item.
We have another proposed donation of land in the Bellhaven area. Y'all are probably familiar with this parcel. We looked at it before, and then the applicant or the owners, I think, took a little more time to assess the market and have come back before us again. Approximately 7.46 acres adjacent to the Cooperage tract, on West Main Street there in Bellhaven, just on the other side of I believe it's Shumont Creek. It's approximately 5 acres of this property is upland and therefore probably buildable. The remaining 2.6 acres plus or minus are wetlands. It's owned by Mr. Tillman, Mr. Brantley Tillman, and 2 other partners at this time.
What's the pleasure of the board?
Okay.
I just, this is beginning to be a routine for people in Bellhaven unloading their property on the people of the county of Beaufort. I mean, this is also, they're just doing away with the tax value on this property. If they give it to us, then there's no tax value on it. Is that correct?
That's right.
And none to us and none to Bellhaven?
Well, if I may, I had the pleasure of spending most of the day with the mayor in Bellhaven, and I mentioned this to him, and he says that they are concerned about what Commissioner Brin just said. You are removing our money from our tax base that we get for taxes for this property. I'm not opposed to the county taking title to the property as a donation, but I really think we've taken that Cooperage tract and we've taken that out of the tax base. If we were to take this for the county, I think the county should consider donating it back to the town, and then they can sell it or do whatever they need to do with it.
Can't do that, I don't think.
You can't sell it once we get it?
No, we can't give it to another municipality.
We can't give it to.
Is that right, Brian?
Well, let's presume we can until the lawyer tells us at the next meeting we can. How about that?
I think you can to a municipality, to another governmental entity, but you can't to a private entity without there being consideration.
Right, right.
And then there was some deal there about it.
Yeah. I think, I'd like to consider if we take this, giving it to the town of Bellhaven to compensate them for some of their burden, and then they can sell it or use it for whatever. One side of this particular property toward the grain elevator, was traded to the town, so there was consideration in the deal, so that the town of Bellhaven could have a pier there. So they already have a pier there that people can, you can put boats up to the pier or you can fish off the pier. I think people mostly fish off the pier now. So, you know, there'd be some logic in us taking the property as a donation and then rolling it back to the town, because we are hurting them pretty bad. The most valuable property in the town of Bellhaven for future real estate development on the water, and the most valuable property in Bellhaven is on the water, is the Cooperage tract that we now have, and this tract. So the mayor was concerned about it, and I think somebody should get to him in the next few days, because they may be doing a resolution or something at their next meeting, and I don't really think we would want them to do that. I think they do deserve some consideration in these matters.
Well, if I could speak to that real quickly, their city manager has been involved in our conversations about the Cooperage tract over the summer. In fact, sat with us as we talked to wildlife about that. We actually do have a meeting scheduled, I think, sometime this week with them to go over that.
Oh, okay, I didn't know that.
But they have been involved in that. And the opportunity that we've looked at is for commercial development. In fact, wildlife worked really great with us on that to say, we're going to put in this section, but here's an area that you can also do public-private partnership development for docks, for other things. So we've really tried hard to make that appropriate. I mean, there's a lot of wetland in there that you can't build.
Both of these properties are eat up with wetlands.
But we had talked about boardwalks, helping the town of Bellhaven apply for a part of grant, put a boardwalk around there and all sorts of things. So those discussions have been.
Oh, okay. The mayor's not aware of that.
The city manager is.
Okay.
Brian, let me ask you something. If the people that's donate to us, why don't they just donate it to the city of Bellhaven? If the people that want us to have it, why don't they just donate it to the city?
That's what I was wondering.
Local politics. Local politics. Tillman is one of the leader of the Pantego Creek LLC, which has the hospital, and he's a bitter enemy of everybody down there that is for the hospital. So it's just not going to happen.
Well,
Mr. Chairman,
Okay.
is there any strings in the donation to us? Is they're giving it to us for a reason? They want us to do something with it?
The only statement Mr. Tillman made in his letter was for the betterment of the people of Bellhaven and Beaufort County.
Well,
No.
I have surveyed both of these properties, and I have surveyed the wetlands on both of these properties, and I've delineated some of the wetlands that are on this particular piece of land. And, you know, I can characterize this as there's a lot of wetlands there.
Anybody else?
My only recommendation to the board would be, if you did want to move forward, was to have a phase one conducted so that we would have a better idea what environmental conditions existed. And the Brownfields program highly recommends at least a phase one.
Commissioner Waters.
I think we have the same situation with both pieces of property. We've got people that are donating it to the county. If they wanted to give it to the town of Bellhaven, I think they would have already done that. I have problems taking it from this LLC and then turn around and giving it back to the town. I think we should be up front with somebody and tell them if that's what this Board of Commissioners is looking at. I had the opportunity to visit with some people that are interested in doing something on either one of these tracks. The good thing about this last one is the water is deeper going up into that creek than it is over here where the ramp is. There's some potential, and here again, I think it's going to take the community, the county and the town working together to pull something off. But there is some potential on both of them. There is a little area that comes out to the creek that looks like it's maybe 50 feet. And on both sides of that, it is truly wetlands. And about the only thing that you've got is adjacent to the railroad track. The real problem with this parcel is access. You got to go across the railroad track to get to it. And for somebody to do much of anything with it, they really would need to be in a different location on this one that you're bringing to us tonight. I think rather than us do something that may not be suitable to the people that are offering it, that maybe what we're to do is postpone that decision and say, let's go ahead and move forward with the phase one on the property. We got to do that before we take title to it anyway. But I am not in favor of taking it and turning around and giving it to the town. I think what we need to do, if that's the intention, we just tell them to give it directly to it. I mean, there's 3 people involved that are gifting this property.
That's all you're after is phase one, right?
Yes, sir.
There's no point in doing a phase one if we're not going to take title to the property. That's a waste of money. Because all of phase one is, they don't go out and do any penetration of the ground or anything like that. They just go to the records and they research and research and research. I've done them, research and research and research, and then write a report. So you don't need to do that until you're going to take title to the property. If you're not going to take title, don't waste that $1,700.
What's the pleasure of the board?
Okay, I make a motion that we proceed and we tell them that we're interested in taking title to the property, but that the county is going to maintain it. There is no offer to be a pass-through to the town of Belhaven on this.
You have a motion, is there a second?
Wait, before you second that, why in the world would you do that, Commissioner Waters? I know you're in real tight with the people down in Belhaven, and you've been in some meetings down there about these properties. You really need to come clean and represent the people of that end of the county, because that's what they elected you for. And you're not doing that when you start cutting the town off from anything that's a benefit to them. You're playing politics.
We're working within the guidelines. I mean, we've got people that came to us and said we would like to donate it, going back to the Cooperage property. This is very similar. We're considering the alternatives on what to do with the property. I, for one, would like to see somebody go in there that we could sell it or either do a long-term lease that would benefit both the county and the town. You got to realize that both of these properties set in Beaufort County, it's not like they sit out there on an island by themselves. So whatever happens is going to benefit both parties.
I don't see any point in us being in the real estate development business. That's not a function of county government. Take the property and deed it to somebody else and let them worry about it.
I think that if we take that property, I think we ought to tell the gentleman that owns it that we'll consider giving it to the town of Belhaven and find out how he feels about that.
I'm not considering.
We haven't voted on whether we're gonna give it to the town of Belhaven yet.
Oh, I know that.
I'd want.
But I think that
All right,
got.
Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second it.
Yeah, there was.
Now, what was the motion again?
The motion is for us to accept the property.
Period, without the conditions.
Okay.
Okay.
And you need to
Now go-
change your original. Is that what we're doing?
No, you can say
No,
without
you-
the conditions.
Okay.
No conditions.
No conditions.
All right, any other discussion?
Could I ask a question?
Okay.
So the question that you're saying is you're going to accept the property with no conditions, not doing a phase one on it to determine to make sure?
No.
I'm sorry.
Okay. You're going to do a
Phase
phase one, and if the phase one comes back clean, you're going to move to accept the property?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
All right, any further discussion? All in favor of Commissioner Waters' motion, raise your right hand. Opposed? 6-1.
Thank you.
Mr. Pack?
Yes, sir. I'm here this evening to, as you can see in your package, to ask you to allow us to accept a $50,000 grant to defer the cost of the North Carolina Emergency Management's 2017 SAR exercise, search and rescue exercise. It's going to be done at Camp Bodie, and it will be for the entire state, plus we will have people from Virginia and South Carolina there. That $50,000 ensures we don't have anything come out of our budget for a SAR exercise this year. It's one of those situations where it's good for all of us. It's going to bring the tourism dollars because those people come and they stay, they arrive on Thursday, they leave on Sunday or Monday. They don't all stay out at Camp Bodie. A lot of them will end up staying at motels and going to restaurants. The good thing is they're also the people we'll call on if we ever do a search and rescue and need dogs, horses, man trackers, or aircraft, because we plan to do all that out at Camp Bodie. All that type of training, plus state's intent is the same as what ours would be. We're going to bring some experts in to actually do some training of some of the teams and to test some of the teams to see how good they really are. Because a dog team and a horse team never knows where they are until somebody from Florida comes up and tests them. I mean, you can say you're good and you can pass all the stuff, but you got to stay up on top of your game. So I would recommend that the Board of Commissioners please approve this request. It's $50,000 coming in. Yes, it's a pass-through, but it's going to be good for Beaufort County, and it's going to be good for our first responders because we'll be able to get some additional training for them.
Where's Camp Bodie at?
South side.
South side, we may be doing
Opposite
some
Creek
training
Road.
over on the north side also, but the primary will be on the south side.
Exactly where is it at?
That's the Boy Scout camp.
Oh, okay. All right.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
When you get the money, are you going to be dictated to by somebody else on how to spend the money, in which case you may go over budget, or are you going to have control of authorizing the expenditures, or the manager, or whoever he designates, or whatever?
The county manager will be the ultimate person responsible for the $50,000 because that's just the way the contracts are always written. However, that all the dollars will be coming through Beaufort County Emergency Services to go through our finance officer and ultimately the county manager for approval. Some of that is already budgeted and fixed. But I can tell you the last 3 state exercises they have run, they have never spent more than $41,000. They put $50,000 in there because of my insistence that we pay for some of the fuel that is expended by some of the training vessels that we use to train other teams on. So it's not fair to ask Bunyan Fire to pay for all the fuel for their boats when we're training somebody else's team from another county on
the
it.
boat.
We will not exceed the grant amount.
Make a motion to accept the grant.
Have a motion, is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed? 7-0.
Have it.
Sir, the second item I have is for the county's emergency operations plan. Last year, you all approved some changes to the emergency operations plan. Those were put into place. However, this year, I'm recommending that you approve it without any changes. As A, we sent it out to the field. None of the department heads, none of the fire departments came back in with any, or EMS, none of the people that work with us came back in with any suggested changes. However, we do have some things coming up. We're going to need to redo our debris removal plan and update it. We're going to be updating our fuel usage plan, working between the city and the county. There's other plans that we're going to be updating, which are going to have an impact, but to go ahead and make any changes right now would be premature until after we've had a chance for everyone that's involved in those plans to review them and make broad stroke changes to the EOP. The EOP is interactive for the first responder community and for the department heads. They can go on it when they see a little bit of blueprint on the screen. If they hit that, it'll take them to that form or to that agency's representation of whatever. The copy that the public sees is on the county's website, and it is a PDF version of the latest approved by you all EOP that's out there. So there's no misnomer when we say it's interactive. It's interactive for the people that use it during a disaster. It's interactive for the people that use it on day-to-day operations. And I would recommend that the board accept the recommendation that the EOP be approved as is for this coming year, and then you'll be seeing some other changes next year.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Have a motion, is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. John, you said the board made some changes last year on this plan?
There were some changes that was brought to the board from the field, and the board did recommend them. They were not extensive, but there were some changes that were submitted, and the EOP was then modified to accept those, both the interactive and the PDF version.
Okay. The PDF version is dated, the one on the website is dated, updated August 2012. So the changes made on this version?
They've got the wrong version up on the website, sir. I'll get with Derek and we'll get that fixed because there's a much newer version than that. It was the version that was approved last year.
I spent the weekend reading this thing and I read the wrong version.
There weren't
Yes,
many
sir,
changes
and I don't
made.
know why the 2012 version would be up there.
I do have a couple questions. Since we have this plan, we have to have a plan in order to get FEMA funding, correct?
That is one of the requirements, yes, sir.
Correct. So we have to approve this. But I just want to make sure on a couple of these things in here. It talks about operating procedures. The mayors have to have operating procedures, develop and maintain. Do you know if those are in place?
I'm sorry, sir, I couldn't hear you. There was a cough in the room.
I'm sorry. On page 10, it talks about the mayors. It talks about operating procedures.
The
Mayors.
mayors?
Yeah, mayors.
Okay.
M-A-Y-O-R-S.
Yes, sir.
I have an accent, but
Well, I can tell you the city of Washington has their own EOP, which matches up with ours, and so does the city of Bellhaven. Other than that, the other towns do not have anything other than what the county puts out.
so like, it talks about a lot of different jurisdictions in here, operations are supposed to have operating procedures. So you're not aware of whether there's any in place to fulfill the plan requirements?
Sir, I'm aware of the city of Washington, I'm aware
Okay.
of Bellhaven's, I am, aware of what the fire departments have in place and this type of thing.
I assume you've read this.
I haven't looked at the 2012 version since 2012, sir.
Okay, so hopefully you'll give me.
I'm best being very honest, I mean.
Okay. My last question is I looked at your email that went out on March 15, 2016.
Yes, sir.
Did it go to all the jurisdictions in the county?
Went to all the department heads.
No, I said jurisdictions, municipalities, towns.
Yes, sir, they're all
This is
included
further in here.
they're included on the department contacts list. If you look in there, you'll see Bubs Carson listed, you'll see the town manager of Bellhaven listed, you'll see the clerk of the city of Aurora listed, you'll also see the clerk of the city, or town of Chocowinity listed.
All the individual, some of them are missing. All the EMS operations?
EMS now goes through Mr. Fleming. I send everything to Mr. Fleming. Mr. Fleming gets them to the EMS.
As being the EOP, the Emergency Operations Person, are you aware that it went out to all the EMS operations?
His indication to me was that he did get no feedback when he sent it out, so that's all I know. No, sir, I did not see the written document that he sent it out.
No further questions. And I appreciate a copy to.
I'll make sure, Derek and I, yes, sir, we'll get the correct one up there.
Anything further?
No, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
We already did it?
Yeah, we did.
All in favor? All opposed?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Good.
I think, don't you have the
Buzzio's.
reappointment?
That was
We
pulled.
took that off, didn't we?
We pulled that at the beginning of the meeting.
Oh, okay. Okay. All right. I've got 3 or 4 items here. Number one, is a motion to begin deliberations at the October meeting as to how Beaufort County could pay for the laboratory fees to reduce the number of inmates in jail. I'm still reviewing the jail records for the people that are in jail and the reasons that they're in jail. And we've got this thing down to, if I understood the last reports that they sent me, they had 85 people in there, but 30 of those were those administrative court people that they pull in once a month when they're going to have court, and they have to make sure everybody's there. That's a very poor system, by the way, for running the court system, is you have to go round up everybody that might be tried. Why can't you just decide who's going to be tried and bring those people? But that's one of the inefficiencies in the court system that's costing us money. But there are other people who've been in there for considerable lengths of time, some of them 6 months and some of them a year, waiting on laboratory or forensic work to be done. There is legislation in North Carolina that provides that you can use private laboratories to do this work. There's a statute on it, providing they have the proper certifications. I've had conversations with, today as a matter of fact, with the chief deputy, and who has had conversations with the district attorney, and I've talked to the district attorney about this in the past. They would like to see something move forward on this because they can see a way that they can reduce the jail population and get people tried, because it's not fair to put somebody in jail and make them sit there forever, and they may be decided that they're innocent. He's been in jail 6 months waiting on the state laboratory. This just doesn't work. So all that I'm asking for is that we request that the manager have those conversations, some conversations with the chief deputy, the district attorney, And I would like to participate in this as a commissioner myself, that's up to the board, to decide so that we can see what we can do about using county tax money to pay for these forensic fees. The most expensive one that I know of is DNA, which is about $1,500 or $1,600. The rest of them are a good deal less than that. And the trade-off on it is this: instead of paying for somebody at $50 a day to be in jail for an extra 3 months, we may be able to spend $300 or $400 and get blood tests back for alcohol or the nature of the drugs, of the white powder he was caught with, determined, and get the trial over with, and we're reducing the jail population. We're saving money and we're serving justice. So that's what I'm asking for in this motion, that we initiate those conversations.
All right, you have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion.
Yes, I had a talk with Deputy Rose yesterday, and I asked him to just look in to find out what the cost of a private laboratory would be. And he called me this afternoon, told me he couldn't be here tonight, but he said that he would like to sit down and talk with me sometime this week and go over and find out the things that that we wanted out of that and the prices and everything, and he would try to get them for us. So I think that's a good idea. I think there should be some kind of limit for how long you stay in jail before you go to a private lab. Like, you know, if you're there 3 months.
Well, yes, sir, and the conditions on each individual would be different. For
Right,
instance,
I
you've
agree, I
got
agree.
Joe, and he's got a family and 3 kids at home. If you can either get him convicted or out of jail, then that takes care of a lot of social problems for
agree.
him. And the reason I want to start conversations is for just what you're talking about, Commissioner Brin, because I envision this thing as working with the decision made on this, maybe of a committee from somebody in the DA's office, a commissioner, somebody in the sheriff's office, and somebody representing the county. Maybe those 4 people can screen when you have an issue, because a lot of these things will come up on short notice, and they can say, okay, we looked at this case, we think you need to go forward this way. I'm not asking that the county just blanket get into the spending of money, and unless it's an advantage to us, we're not going to spend the money.
Does the sheriff's department pay for their DNA testing now and blood testing and everything?
It goes to the state lab.
State labs.
State lab, state picks it
Everything
up?
goes,
Okay.
yeah, through the DA,
I didn't know
actually.
whether they were charged for anything like that or not.
That is the trade-off. It takes a little bit more time, but it's not at our cost.
That's right.
There was formerly a lab, as you'll recall, 3 years ago, I think, that started in Pitt County, and it has gone belly up
Oh, really?
last year. Golden Leaf actually funded them.
Oh, really?
to buy equipment and put in there.
Oh, okay.
Last year, they went out of business because it's a rather expensive.
Right.
Usually, law enforcement agencies usually will not use private labs because of the chain of evidence.
Chain of custody, yeah.
Custody.
Chain of custody, yeah.
Very, very concerned about that.
But
And
LabCorp,
standards.
as long, and that's the other thing that has to be done is the legislation in North Carolina says that they have to give the certifications that the lab has to be certified. And you got LabCorp here in North Carolina, which is one of the biggest in the United States. They have all of the certifications. And the other thing that if you had a committee, it would be looking at that of why did this flub if they didn't have the certifications, because that can get you into a lot of trouble.
It's not necessarily the cost of the test that's the real big, the higher driver. It's the cost of having the technician come down.
Right,
spend the
to
day,
testify.
Testify and all those kind of things, which the state lab guys do, and the state's paying for that.
Yeah.
If
All
we
right.
do this and go with private one, we're paying that.
You would.
Yeah.
We're paying that.
And you look at how,
This is just for informational purposes.
this is just for
so
informational purposes.
Let's go ahead and vote on it.
Yeah.
All in favor? All right, 7-0.
Okay. The next one's not going to go as well, I don't think, but a motion to instruct our legislatures to initiate a local bill to recall commissioners. So,
That's your motion?
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to second that motion,
Okay.
because I'd like to get it off the table for another 6 months so it doesn't come back.
well, it is an election year, and you're not running, but you will be running in 2 years. You'll
Yeah,
hear
but
about this
I'll
again.
second that.
You'll hear
I
about
have
this
a
again.
motion and a second. Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor of that motion? Wait a minute.
In favor of it?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I'm not going to vote for it then. I'm against it. If he's gonna kill it by
Yeah.
taking it off for 6 months,
I'm gonna vote for
why would I
that.
vote for it? I'm not voting for it.
Wait a minute, if you vote for it, that means you're voting for recall.
He's gonna kill it if you vote for it. I can bring it up again next month if it doesn't pass. So those of you that want to kill it, vote for it and let him kill it.
Well, we've got an election coming up, so we may take care of the recall. Let's just let it die. Let's just let it die.
So
You withdraw your second?
Yeah, I'll withdraw.
so it dies for lack of second. Okay,
Oh,
next
boy.
item.
I forgot we got an election in November. I just got reminded of that.
The open,
That is a 4-year recall.
the open meetings law and hospital resolutions passed at the August meeting. I'm not going to dwell on this. I agree with what Ms. Lay had to say. All that mess was illegal, and the county has put itself into a really bad position because whereas on October the 1st, we had $6.5 million. It was totally under control of the county. What we did is we perpetually, what you passed perpetually gives Vidant a hand in the use of that money. You guys should have been a lot smarter than that. What you did was illegal. So maybe it'll disappear somewhere in the woodwork anyway. So we'll let that one go on. The resolution requiring forensic or management audit of Chalkawinity EMS. Resolved by the County Board of Commissioners to perform a forensic or management audit of the Chalkawinity EMS beginning on July the 1st of 2014 and coming forward to today. We still need that information because these guys are so poorly managed. There's money going all over the place over there. The rumor mill, if 1/3 of what's in the rumor mill about Chalkawinity EMS is true, you have a total disaster on your hands, and you need to get a hold of this thing. So that's my motion.
Have a motion, is there a second?
Mr. Chairman, I think we said enough about that already, about the management.
But it's true, you can't run from it, Commissioner. That's what you're trying to do. You're
there a
trying to
second?
run from it. You can't. You have to run at it.
You got
There's
to
no
compare.
second, it dies for lack of second.
All right.
All right. Broad Creek contract amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. This is a proposed amendment to the Broad Creek EMS contract. As you'll recall, at the last meeting, you amended the contract with Chalkawinity to take out the collection piece where they had to come to you to ask to do collections. You have the same language in the contract you have with Broad Creek. You'll see that listed in item number 2. The squad will charge service to keep all proceeds, but may not take or will not take court action against non-payers without authorization from the Board of Commissioners. So to be consistent with what you approved last month, you will see the amendment to this contract, and that amendment allows for the EMS agent to charge, but will retain all proceeds, and may take any and all legal steps to collect any amounts of it. So it makes it consistent with your actions at the last meeting. So we've asked your approval of that.
Okay, what's the pleasure of the board?
So moved.
Have a motion and a second. Discussion.
There's an error on page 433.
433.
The very first sentence. First is
The
misspelled.
The Fust Amendment.
Yeah.
That should be the First Amendment.
I was wondering what that,
Huh? There are some of us that read these things.
We were testing you.
You passed.
You passed.
So I got 100?
Yep.
All in favor? Do we vote? Yeah. Okay, 7-0. Legislative goals?
Yes, sir. As you recall at the last meeting, we talked a little about legislative goals. They are due, they're due at the end of this month, sometime toward the end of this month, to be submitted electronically to be considered by the Association of County Commissioners. So far, what we have pulled together is, of course, the transportation piece, and we have attached the resolution that you approved from the Mideast about asking that there be some funding for transportation distributed by geographic areas. There'd be some consideration about that. And then also you have a letter from BHM, Beaufort Hyde Martin Regional Library, asking that you resubmit the library goal that was currently in this year's goal to return public aid funding to the pre-2011 levels. There was actually some action taken on that, and they got a little bit more money, but they're still not at the pre-2011 levels. And they would ask that you submit that one again, or at least ask it to be continued on. And then if there are any additional goals that this board may have, we'd be interested in hearing those.
Anybody?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What about teachers' assistants, additional teacher assistants, or full funding for them, for the schools? Is that a goal?
It certainly can be.
You can present that as a goal, but when it goes before the state, it might not make the cut.
That's right. When it goes to the association, when they go through them,
Yeah,
it may not make the
I
cut.
understand that.
We don't
But you
have
certainly
nobody on
can
that
make
issue.
that. So that would be to return funding levels for
Teachers' assistants.
teacher assistants.
That conference is January the 12th and 13th in Raleigh.
This one? Okay. January 12th and 13th.
The other one that I would like to see, and I'm sure that the state will do it, is that the lottery funding revert back to 40% for capital.
Yeah,
That's gonna be up
That ain't
there.
never gonna happen.
That'll be.
That's there every
That's
year.
there every year. It's there every year and fails every year.
Anybody else have anything?
Mr. Chairman, at the State Association meeting, I went to one of the breakout sessions on solar farms. And the problem we've got all across the state is that nobody is addressing the demolition cost and how that's going to be handled. Every solar company's got their own way of doing it, where they, say we're going to have a bond, and at the end of the 25 years or 20 years, the end of the contract, that they'll demolish it. In some cases, the county is being named as the beneficiary. I'd like to see us try to get us moved to where the solar companies start putting money into a state trust fund that can be tapped when a site goes belly up or when somebody decides to walk away from it. What we're seeing all across the state is that by the time the site is obsolete, is that it may have changed hands 3 times, 4 times. The other thing is that the landowner, can change over the life of it. And what's going to happen is probably at the end of that, the county's going to end up being asked to pay to do the demolition. And it appears to me that if they're willing to pay money for a bond, then those companies would be willing to put money into an escrow account that's held by the state of North Carolina, to where Beaufort County could put an application in to come in and pay to clean up a site that everybody's gone. Nobody wants to pay for it. Somebody files bankruptcy, because I can tell you, these people, when they're getting $800 a month or $1,000 a month, they're going to spend it. They're not going to put money to the side, the landowner. And the chances are the people that, are putting them in, unless it's somebody like Duke, and most of them are held by an LLC, those people are going to be going too. So there's going to be absolutely nobody out there, and the money's gone. Is it maybe we put some pressure and have this as one of our goals, because it was a hot topic, and there was probably 15 counties that all said we're trying to do it different.
Got it.
Okay. Anybody else have anything? All right.
Okay, we'll get those submitted. Just a couple updates for you. I met with, or I did a presentation last week at the last City of Washington City Council meeting regarding EMS. That presentation was to try to clarify some of the misconceptions or misinformation that may have been circulating around. So I think we were able to clear some of that up. We actually had a meeting today, Anita and I did, with their folks, to talk about some of the financial numbers that the EMS committee had asked for. I had a couple of recommendations that I had indicated to the city that based on the conversations that I had heard pretty clearly from city council, I thought, in my presentation to them, that I had a few recommendations I was going to make to y'all regarding that. They asked me not to do that until they had the opportunity to bring their financials back, and so I won't do that until we meet next week. So that's kind of where all that stands. We're on track to meet again next week on the 13th with the EMS committee to talk about those funding models and see where that shakes out. The second item I have for you is the First Bank building. As you're aware, First Bank is moving very quickly on their new building on 15th Street. They are scheduled, I had an email from the city exec the other day. They are scheduled to move out of that building on October the 14th, the existing First Bank building on October the 14th, and they are opening their new location on October the 17th. And haven't heard, and I assume that's still on go. The lease that we have with them, or they have with us, ends November the 5th, and they intend to turn the keys over on November the 4th, that Friday. It's a Saturday. They intend to turn them over on that Friday. They've also had some conversations when I was over there the other day talking with Mr. Taylor about it. They obviously are outfitting their entire new bank with new furniture and new stuff, and they are going to make us a proposal, because we would obviously have to put some furniture in there as well, and they're going to make us a proposal as to whether we might be interested in just acquiring what they have in there, some of the stuff they already have in there. We kind of laughed. He said it'd probably cost me more to move it out of here than it would be to leave it. And I said, well, just leave it then. So, but he's going to put a number together, and I think we should be pleased with that number, is what I anticipate. So, but we do need to have some conversations about where we move forward with that building. We did have some numbers in the budget to have some conversations about that, and that was pulled out of the budget. So what we would like to do, though, is put a group together and talk about what potential plans are for that building. I think there's some opportunities, as you're aware of that side section of that building. They have a very large meeting room. I think there's some opportunities there to convert that and use that so that you don't have folks standing in the hall and you don't have folks standing on the walls. But we'd like to work through that with the board and would defer to the chairman on how we want to do that.
Okay, well, what I like to do, I like to make a committee. Commissioner Richardson, you don't want it?
I'll do it.
And myself, anybody volunteer?
I will.
Okay.
And we'll sit down and get together and talk about it. We'll get some plans and kind of have some conversations. So thank you for that. That's all I had. Thank you.
All right.
Mr. Chairman, I have one thing before we go. A lot of us, when we were in Winston-Salem at the conference, went to the workshop on the frequent flyers. Y'all, and we have two areas here that have a lot of calls. Bellhaven, one, and Chocowinity seem to have the most calls. Can we get John to do an investigation, Brian, to see what kind of frequent flyers we have in those two just to start? I mean, we eventually would want to do it throughout the county, but look at those two areas to see.
Talking about EMS frequent flyers.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. People who repeatedly call EMS.
Yeah, that's just a local term for people who call a lot. But those counties have really done an excellent job in eliminating a lot of those calls and working with those people, and even making them healthier by pooling resources to eliminate a lot of those calls, and it helps the local EMS and it helps them, and it just seems like it's a win-win situation if we could start and move in that direction.
We can do it. It does help build capacity in the system.
There another motion then?
So, adjourn.
We adjourn.
Second.